Well, we haven't done that area. What I did is I got the water. And they just got there.
Based on my son, he's a senior.
So the high school is not there. Fill back in, grade it, and seed it, and be strong.
It's computer engineering.
I said, that's what you learned the most.
Yeah. So it's not like he business.
I told him you should do it. I said, you need to hear it. I mean, but 2 years now. I wasn't even
Which way? Angle this way. All right. I was going to do it that way, but then I'd be bending over and nobody wants to see this. Oh, I got to watch.
I don't know. I'll email right now. We'll figure it out.
With some.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you.
No, I
Plan on it.
didn't. I'll accept that.
You on? All right, let's get this show moving. Okay, we're gonna get started with our committee meetings. And first up is street sidewalks and lighting with Mr. Greer. Go ahead, hold on.
I just want to let you know, Nina is here on my phone on speaker. So, FYI.
All right. All right, I'd like to bring the order street sidewalk and lighting committee. It is 6 p.m., July 6, 2020, at the Active Adult Center. All committee members are here. Mrs. Angeloff is on the phone. Other council members are noted and guests noted as well. Today we have one late request for legislation, and I'm going to read the title of this late request, and then I'm going to have to invoke Council Rule 702. This is a preliminary participatory legislation for Worcester Road North and Norton Avenue. Before we begin, do I have a motion to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Fry.
And I will second. All right.
Nina.
Sounds good.
Seconded by Nina. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. This is a resolution, preliminary participation or participatory legislation for Worcester Road North and Norton Avenue. A resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton giving consent to the Director of the Ohio Department of Transportation for the improvement of Worcester Road North and Norton Avenue, project ID 108372, and declaring an emergency. Now, I believe, Mr. Tracy, if you'd like to jump in, but I believe this is the same process that we took with Van Buren, Worcester Road. So this is, we were approved for the AMAX grant already. This is the 80-20. We were approved for the grant, and this is to give consent to start the first phase of this project, which is Worcester Road and Norton Avenue.
So just to back up for 1 second, just so you know, the reason it's late and I'm asking for emergency wording is ODOT has requested that this be in by the end of August. And since we're going to be on recess, we want to try to push it through this month. I just received the legislation on June 30th, so that I put it in last week for today's meeting. This is indeed for an MS project 80-20 match for Worcester Road North, and this is Worcester Road North from Birch Street to near Norton Avenue, Orchard Avenue, right in there. And then Norton Avenue from 4th Street Northwest to the same area, to Worcester Road North. So these two projects will eventually, tie into everything along Worcester and State, 619, all that area. This preliminary participatory legislation we'll put it in effect now just to show that we're going to participate in this project, but there will be no funding due until April of 2021. Just so you know that there's no funding this year, it's for next year. And it's not certain yet, but this will likely be through permissive tax funds, funded through permissive tax. It's a bit of a juggling act when you put the 5-year capital plan together and start looking at funding and where things fall, but at this point, it appears that we'll be looking at permissive tax funds.
Could you refresh, how much are we expecting this project to cost altogether?
So the actual total of the project, for the estimate right now, is about 950,000, rounded to about 950. So the city's match would be about 190. Just for, this doesn't happen all the time, but a bit of good news is we set aside that 190,000 with ODOT for this year's South Van Buren Avenue and Waterloo Road project. And that process was bid out at significantly less. And I don't know if it's been awarded yet, so I'm going to refrain from saying who got the job, but it came in at like 540,000. So our match on that right now is sitting around $110,000 instead of the 190 that we put in. There could be some changes in the project, and maybe some change orders or something, but overall, there will be some savings and some money coming back from that project. We would expect that.
All right, so the 950,000 is for the entire project, Worcester Road and Norton.
That's for Worcester North and North Avenue.
And just want to clarify, this is from, what you say, Birch Street to roughly the Indian.
Yeah, right around Orchard Avenue.
Orchard Avenue, and then from 4th Street to the same area.
Yep.
For Norton.
Yep. Overall, it's about 3 total lane miles.
And there is no project time for this, so we're looking at.
No, this will be probably next summer sometime.
All right. Is there any questions from the committee?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not-
Mr. Greer, I have a question. What was the total amount of this, project?
The total amount of this project, including Worcester Road North and Norton Avenue, is estimated to be $950,000 for the entire project. Barberton will match their 20%, will cost roughly $190,000.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Freck?
You had said, I was trying to get the parameters of where this went, and you said Birch Street or Burt Street?
Burt, B-U-R-T.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's where it stops.
Which is over that odd street that comes off of Worcester Road and goes in between some storefronts or something.
No, Burt goes between, it goes where Summit Avenue, West Summit Street comes down,
Mm-hmm.
and it meets right there.
Okay.
So if you recall, we just,
supported.
a year or two ago, we paved from the concrete on Worcester Road North there up to Burt. It was a very bad section. So this would continue that and meet the previous AMATS project that was done in like 2017 on Worcester Road North. It ended at Orchard, so it would
Okay,
complete that section.
all right, I thought, where's Birch Street now? I thought, oh, they probably mean Birch.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Greer, question, is Birch Street, is that the one-way street in between those houses? Is that a one-way street?
No, Burt Street is the street that runs right next to Christian Healthcare Ministries.
Okay, I thought that was.
West Summit and North Summit come together there near Burt.
Are there any other questions from committee? Any questions from council? Mr. Bevett?
Thank you, Mr. Greer. I was just wondering, the what was the street that, was just awarded the bid? What,
Oh, those, for this year,
yes,
that's South Van Buren between Robinson and Snyder. And then Waterloo Road, from West Road North to the city limits.
okay, and when will that get underway?
We don't know yet, because I haven't confirmed that the bid has officially been awarded. I just know the amount.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's gonna happen this year, so I would say within the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe that project you're referring to was 900 and some thousand, and you're saying it came in roughly about 540?
Originally, that project was, or the engineer estimate was 770,000, right around there. And it came in, at 540,000.
And you're saying the difference is kind of what this new project will cost us?
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from council? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation? Motion made by Mrs. Fry.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
And I will second it.
All right, and seconded by Mrs. Angela. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Miscellaneous discussion. I have nothing. Do we have anything from committee?
No, I do not.
We have any discussions from council? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will make a motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Fry
I will second that.
and seconded by Mrs. Angela. And we are adjourned at 6:09 PM.
Okay, next up is Environmental Health and Social Services, Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services, meeting at the Active Adult Center, July 6th at 6:09. Members present, other council members noted, and you have some guests noted. And sir, your name is?
It's Alex Quay from Rouse Cal.
Alex, I'm sorry,
Quay, Q-U-A-Y.
and you're from where?
Rouse Cal, to talk about the additional tax levy.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Today, topics of discussion, we have none for legislation, no requests. Open this up for miscellaneous discussion. The committee, council members, guests. Hearing none, motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
I'll
second that.
Mr. Griffin, and Mr. Heidi. And we are adjourned at 6:10. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir.
Okay, next up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes, Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Good. Planning, annexation, and codes meeting, tonight, at 6:10, the adult, active center. Members are present, Mrs. Colburn, Mr. Greer, Mr. Hedges, and on the phone. Other council members present that are on my sheet. We have a draft ordinance tonight, titled Formation of the Community Improvement Corporation. An ordinance authorizing the formation of the Community Improvement Corporation for the city of Barberton and approving its articles of incorporation. I'm not sure if Attorney Sugarman, is he on the phone? Was there any comments from him? I don't see the mayor there. So is Attorney Sugarman going to be on the phone?
I think it's Alex Quay is probably going to. Alex, are you gonna answer the questions?
I'm here, is it regarding the
The CIC?
I don't know if Urs looked into that yet. I can work with him on that. I know he couldn't make the meeting tonight though.
Okay. So you're not here to answer those questions, you're here for the
The tax levy,
Mhm.
yeah.
get all that, so I don't know.
Nina, Mr. Sugarman is not here tonight. He hasn't had a chance to look at that. Alex Quay from Browse McDowell is here, and he is here to answer questions about the levy.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for the gentleman from Ross and Dow, regarding the CIC?
You can't answer those questions.
Oh, okay, all right, I'm sorry. Are there any questions from, the, members of this committee? I think we have had this since April. We started, this back in April. I have no other changes that was emailed me, from the mayor or from Mr. Sugarman. The changes we received the last time, in April, and what was that? Excuse me, I have a sore throat, June. So does anybody have any questions?
I have
think
no.
I can answer them, but we can go ahead and go through this, or we can, has anybody emailed the mayor, with questions with this?
Chair, this is Mr. Greer.
Mr. Greer?
I did email the mayor after our last council meeting. I believe I emailed him on June 24th, and kind of submitted some concerns. So we did have a discussion with some changes that some council members wanted to see or had wanted to get feedback from. And I believe that the mayor said that he would have Mr. Sugarman here to answer those and see what, and I didn't see any changes. I haven't received any confirmation other than that questions and concerns would have been forwarded to Mr. Sugarman for review. I would like to say that just kind of putting it out there what I wrote the mayor as far as changes and some of the stuff's noted from last time during our last council meeting. I didn't like the idea of members that are politically involved having a voting role on the CIC.
Can you repeat that? I could not hear you.
Yeah. One of the things that I suggested to the mayor in an email that I was hoping to have addressed today, and I know we can't address it, but I just wanted to put it on record, was having political members involved in voting on the board of the CIC. I also wanted to see a little bit of restriction on people that sit on like boards, having being able to participate in and like organizations being able to participate in the CIC. I also suggested a minimum quorum of 8 instead of what is currently in there. And I also suggested like a covenant of sorts that protects the CIC articles and regulation, or article and code of regulations for a period of 5 years, starting in 2020. This would, at which time every 5 years there would be a review done for amendments and require a majority vote for amendments, and any emergency amendments outside of the review period would have to have a unanimous vote by the board. This was in an effort to protect the CIC from going rogue, so to speak. And I also asked if there was a, well, in quote, a kill switch for the organization, that council would be able to dissolve this organization if we deemed it necessary. I haven't heard anything back after the email, but I just wanted to put that on record. I know we can't answer any of that right now. And with such, I personally would like to see this stay in committee until we have our amendments, or at least an explanation in response from our concerns from last council. And with that, that's all I have.
Go ahead, sir.
Sure, thank you. I can speak to some of Mr. Cruz's points. I know the mayor did submit certain concerns from council members about the existing draft of the CIC articles. I believe Mr. Sugarman is looking into making those changes and ensuring to what extent council can exercise control, certain parameters of control over the CIC and its board members. given that the purpose of the CIC is to kind of have a separate and distinct, body and governance and workflow than what council has. So we just I know our firm's looking into making sure that those recommendations that Mr. Greer had can in fact be incorporated, and if they can be, a new draft to be provided. So that's sort of the status of where that is, to my knowledge at least.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, was that Mr. Hunt
No,
No.
who was speaking?
Mr. Quay.
Okay. Mr. Greer, you did not email, did you copy me on that mayor's email?
I did not,
Okay, can you please send that over to my email? I'd appreciate that.
absolutely.
Thank you. I didn't hear exactly what the conversation was, but I will further that with, the tape. I'll have Renee send me over the tape so I can hear, what he had said. And, I will then, have a meeting with the mayor along with, the email from Mr. Greer. I did not know there was any changes because I was not emailed. If I was, had been emailed, I could have jumped on this, but I was not aware of this. The only thing that I said, that was from last, council meeting was the 5 to 16. That was something that Mrs. Devetti said and Mr. Hyde said. The other things that Mr. Greer just explained, I was not made aware of. Therefore, I don't have an answer for any of that because I happen to know about it. So, that's why it's so important, to let the chairperson know, what your feelings are, and then that gives me something to go to the mayor, and see what we can do for with Mr. Sugarman. But that didn't happen. So, does anybody else from the body have any questions? And please, you can talk into the microphone so I can hear clarity a little bit better. I don't see any hands up.
Mrs. DeBever.
A possible, change to see that, where it specifies one member of city council, that we could specify that member based on maybe what committee they chair. Just like a lot of other positions that a lot of other committees do for, other commissions that the city council has a board seat. So that was another change that we had discussed. I don't know how others feel about that.
And I think that was, brought up, I think the mayor had said that that would be like an application or interviews or something of that sort, that they were going to, put that together. I don't know if he's going to request any of the city council to send their resume or their recommendation that they would like to be on that board. That has not, conversation with the mayor and I have not brought up. He said that last meeting that he would have probably an application in that. That's what I wanted to talk to, Mr. Superman about, because Cotton Falls and Green and Stowe, I believe they all have that. So that, I think it would not be in the code of regulations or that, articles of incorporation. So that, I don't think that would be stated in that.
Well, it is.
I'm not an attorney.
It is stated in the composition of the board. It says, yeah, it is stated, and one shall be a member of city council. I would like that to say one shall be, the chair of the finance committee from city council, or whoever is deemed, that way you know who's, it's always that person, it's always that position. It's not just a pick and choose from city council. I just think that it clarifies it a little better. That's my opinion. I would like to see that. And it could be.
So that whoever is appointed for city council would be on that for the 3 years. I believe that was 3 years on that. So it wouldn't be somebody new every time. It would be that one person that would be responsible to go to the meetings and be active in this and to, report back to city council. So, I wouldn't want to point a finger at anybody on council. This is a meeting that's gonna take a lot of time, patience, and whatnot. So, and it doesn't make any difference to me, any of us are qualified to do that. You go to the meeting, you listen, and you bring back their suggestions and what they're doing and that type of thing. So, I just think that any one of us can do that. And if so, if it's somebody on the streets or something like that, they go to those meetings and they'll report back to us. So we'll just, I'll discuss that with the mayor and Mrs. I'm sorry, I was writing her name down to, Mr. Sugarman and see what that is, and maybe I'll call some of the communities since I'm quarantined here, that I can ask them how they went about doing their applications and that type of thing. Is that okay with everybody there?
Yes, it's fine by me.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the speaker or is that Mr. Heidi? Do you have your hand up or is that just the speaker? Mr. Heidi, do you have something to say?
I do not.
Okay, all right, okay. Well, then I guess we're not going to take this out of committee until we get some of those answers. And like I said before, we went through readings, we started this, clear back plan, and to drag this on anymore with more questions, it's a good thing that we do that so we can have everything in place. But, this is our second time around, so please get your questions to either me or the mayor so we can get this resolved and see if we're going to go forward with this or what we're going to do with this CIC. I believe it's very, very important for the city to be able to have this corporation to move us forward. Instead of going backwards and so much negativity, that we can go forward with this and get some grants as the other communities are doing. And I think this is what the city needs. And I'm sure that if it doesn't work out, or we don't get grants or something of that sort, then we can take a look at that at that point. But this is something to bring the city forward, to move forward on it. So please, I'm just begging you, get your questions to me so I can go forward with that. I can't go out in public right yet until I get my testing done, but I can stay home and be on the phone. So I'd appreciate that with council. So with that, is there any miscellaneous? Does anybody have any miscellaneous discussion?
This is the
Thank you, Chair. I was under the impression from the last meeting that we expressed our questions and some ideas that we were interested in, and that the mayor was gonna get back with us about those. So, I mean, my questions don't
I
expand.
agree with you. I thought maybe.
So my questions don't expand beyond what we discussed. And I feel like Mr. Greer's questions were very similar. He might have had a couple extra ones, but, so I feel like all of the things that we discussed should be addressed with Attorney Sugarman, if that's how more than one person feels about some of the additions or changes.
Well noted. I will get on that. Like I said, I'm home, I can do that. Any other miscellaneous discussions with planning? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Coburn.
And I'll second.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Sorry, Mr. Nedges?
No, that was Mr. Greer.
Okay, I should preface next time.
Okay, we are adjourned at, I'm not quite sure if my clock's right, we'll say 6:30. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Rules, Marketing, and Development, Mr. Griffin.
Rules, Marketing, and Development, meeting tonight, July 6th, Active Adult Center. All members are present and others as noted. Tonight, we have several pieces of legislation to discuss. Our first piece of legislation titled Proposed Charter Amendment, Department of Public Service. Did everybody get a chance to read their, what these are about? These items will be brought before the voters in November to place these on the ballot. So we have like 3 or 4 of them. Do we have any discussion? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These charter amendments, while I do thank the Charter Review Commission for their work, and I do agree with some and I do not agree with some, I must say that without having 3 readings for a charter amendment and non-emergency language, I don't feel comfortable making motions to bring anything out of committee.
Yes, Mrs. Fry.
You do realize that these have to be at the Board of Elections.
That's why I said without the ability to go 3 readings on a charter amendment, which is the governing piece of paper that we use for the city, without being able to go 3 readings without the public being present, without emergency language, I just do not feel comfortable with making any motions within the committee.
The citizens will be able to vote on these.
I'm well aware of that.
And you think that because they're not here voicing their opinion, they can't do that at the ballot box?
I have full intention to keep these on file and bring them up in a timely manner next year.
Chairman,
You're good.
Mr. Chairman. I also agree with Mr. Heidick. I myself personally think these should be all changed, even with the planning director. The mayor should choose who the planning director is, and also for the parks director. I think that's all choices the mayor should make. But without 3 readings, I don't feel comfortable moving forward with this, unless you want to skip your recess in August. We can go through August. And still
It will,
sign.
they have to be there by August the 5th.
Therefore, that I think I'm not comfortable moving forward with this either.
Mrs. Coleman.
You realize that we only do this every 5 years.
Yes, I do, but as the Board of Elections also approved last year when they asked you to rush moving the primary, which was killed because there wasn't time for 3 readings, I believe a precedent was set that without 3 readings on a charter amendment, then it should be a no-go. I am more than happy to bring this up in a timely manner next year, just as the Board of Elections did last year when it was not a Charter Review Commission. I have no quarrel with, well, maybe 1 or 2 of them, but the timeliness of them, I am not comfortable with making motions.
Are you comfortable with the other 3? Have you checked all of them out?
That goes for any charter amendment. Without 3 readings, without emergency language, I do not feel comfortable.
Mr. Majors?
Okay, you know, two readings, I think would be fine on these. There's not gonna be a whole lot more after that second meeting. If you can't bring it up in these 2 meetings, we need to get these on here.
Why is it always rushed though? Why wasn't this brought up last month or 3 weeks ago? Why is it always rushed for 2 readings to do this? I think we should learn from this, just so we can learn from this and go back and say, you know what, guys?
It's all, excuse me.
I think we should all go back and this way, we'll say next time we have plenty of time to put this on there instead of rushing it. So with that, we should have 3 readings on emergency. That's just my opinion.
Okay, I think 2 readings is okay. The difference between 2 and 3 readings, that 3rd reading, there's not a whole lot there. So that's why I feel 2 readings would be all right.
Go ahead, Mrs. Levy.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Kind of a mimic off of what Mr. Medges said. If we want to change the charter so that we only have 2 readings, because that's ample time, I suppose that should be a charter amendment change listed on this paper, with all due respect. If we feel like 2 readings is enough, and the law director has indicated that to us several times, the reason that it's 3 readings and the emergency wording information in the charter, if we do it, is because it's in the charter. So if what Mr. Medges is saying, he feels like 2 readings is ample time, then perhaps that should be a change here, and it should have been recommended by the Charter Review Commission. As it stands now, our charter reads that you have to have 3 readings. Now, our forefathers set it up that way, and to make a change to the charter by suspending the rules of the charter, to me, I have to agree with Mr. Hyatt, just doesn't sit right with me. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Davick. Well, what I can see right now is we don't have a vote to take this out of committee. So we might as well make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President,
Yes,
can I ask a question?
yes, please.
Could you not hold a special meeting within the month of July?
Oh, yeah, you can do that.
Would that count as a review?
She's mentioned about a special meeting. You could have one in August. We've done that before.
Maybe because of the time.
Oh, that's right. Excuse me.
August 5th is,
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
If, a quick check of the calendar, August 3rd is the first Monday in August. The 5th is obviously the Wednesday. So a 3rd reading could be immediately following the 2nd reading on the 27th. Have it on the 3rd. It can get to the Board of Elections that night or the next day after it's signed. And please remember, this is just to put on the ballot. The voters have, and we have a duty to explain this to the voters for the next 3 months. So I understand the principal argument of 3 readings. Please understand the voters, there's 3 months of educating the voters on the good, the bad, and whatever on these charter amendments that'll go in front of the voters. So I understand the principal argument. But you could have a meeting on August 3rd, get it to the Board of Elections by the 5th, if needed, have that 3rd meeting. But there is 3 months before it actually goes to the ballot.
Mr. Betty.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. I was just pulled out my calendar because, so what the mayor's saying is legislative is the 13th. And then, so that would be 1 reading, then the 27th would be the 2nd reading, and then the 3rd would be the 3rd reading?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
If there was a special meeting the 3rd to give that 3rd reading, I would be okay with that.
But it would still have emergency work, have to have emergency working, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
That I can live with. Not having 3 readings is, to me, like you said, Mrs. Devevic, a high irony to suspend a charter, to amend a charter.
My only other concern with the whole voting thing, and I might be the only one here that is thinking this way, but I'm concerned about possible voter suppression in November, just given the virus, and making sure that, not every citizen here in the community, you might remind them that today's voting day and they go vote, but to actually, if it happens that we end up doing mail-in voting, that will eliminate, I believe, a lot of voters because they will not take the proper process. That's just sort of my thought process, as far as the manner in which voting occurred in May and what we could potentially see as a result of the virus in November.
Go ahead, Carol.
The thing is that this is the year for presidential
Right.
elections, so people are going to be pretty serious about voting. And if they have to request a ballot, I believe that they will do that.
They can already request a ballot right now.
Just a side note, I do agree with Mrs. Tracy.
Okay, getting people out the vote this year in November, I don't think is gonna be a problem, just because
Providing that you vote.
they're gonna vote. This is a presidential election, and, you know, they all come out for that, basically.
Hello, can I say something? Mr. Griffin,
Yes,
may I have the floor?
yes, please, Mrs. Angelo.
Thank you so much. I don't have a problem with 3 readings, with that, coming in. I really think that if we postpone this, that, you know, the charter review, they worked very hard on this and did have a short time. And the time is because of the pandemic, there's a lot of things that was going on. I doubt very much, if it was done intentionally, it's not that easy to get people to sit on boards. First of all, I mean, there's a lot that you have to do there. And I think that, I do not agree on next year. I think that's not what council should be doing. I think that we need to put this on the ballot. I think that people need to read that. And they do have, from the time that it goes on, they have 3 months to review this and talk amongst themselves, or council people and whatnot. 3 readings, August 3rd, then I don't have a problem with a special meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Angelo.
Thank you.
So, Mrs. Fry.
I'd like to say one more thing. You're indicating that we were trying to rush things through, but if you all remember, we have not even been meeting every week. Everything's been in flux with the COVID. And so it's not normal times. We didn't have a committee put together because of COVID. We didn't have our regular meetings to be able to discuss things. The Charter Review Committee worked very hard with limited amount of time to get this together. And as I said, the people get to vote. What are they gonna say in a meeting here that is going to change how they intend to vote? Just because they get to stand up and say what their beef is with one charter amendment or another, in the end, they get to say no at the ballot box.
Exactly.
So I don't really see your reasoning. Anybody that's against it, I don't see your reasoning. If this was something we were shoving through and the public did not get to voice how they feel about it, then you would have an excuse. But this is no excuse.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My excuse, which I don't believe an excuse, is the charter itself. As Mrs. DeBevick said, if we want to change to put a charter amendment on to go 2 readings, we can do that. But it is the highest irony that we would suspend a document to ask to amend a document. That just doesn't make sense. If it calls for 3 readings, and it's something such as the charter that we govern, I have no problem putting these on the ballot. I have a problem with trying to amend something that governs the way we operate and not abide by the same document that guides how we operate. And I know that may be an unpopular opinion, but it is mine, and that's what I take into consideration.
Mrs.
Are we
Coburn.
going to discuss these tonight, or are we going to accept them as they are? Since we're gonna do 3 readings, are we going to go over these 5 things that they're asking to put on the ballot?
Mr. Chair, I'm comfortable with,
You're comfortable with what?
with special meeting and 30. Comfortable making motions on all of them.
Okay.
So we're okay with them as they're written?
As they're written, yes.
Okay,
Fine, we're gonna make a motion to call for this. We're gonna have 3 readings, correct?
Yep.
Still have to make
Do
a
we have to
motion.
call for them individually? Are they on your list?
They're individual. Okay.
Okay.
You talk to the person.
Okay, do I have a motion to call for the first draft ordinance proposal charter amendment, Department of Public Service? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I will not second
You can second.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next piece of legislation, draft ordinance proposed charter amendment, planning commission, planning director. The planning director shall serve at the pleasure of the mayor. Do I have a motion for this?
I'll make that motion.
Second? I'll second. Motion made by Tom, second by me. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Draft ordinance, proposed charter amendment, Parks and Recreation Commission Director. The Director of Parks and Recreation shall serve at the pleasure of the mayor. Do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make that motion.
Second? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Next piece of legislation, proposed charter amendment, other commissions or boards. The elimination of several boards that are no longer relevant to the current operation of the city. Do I have a motion for this piece of legislation?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next piece of legislation, proposed charter amendment, charter review commission. The mayor shall appoint the charter review commission no later than the last day of February. You want to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. So that's our last piece of legislation for tonight. Do we have any more miscellaneous discussion on these?
Over here.
Mr. DeGuerre.
Thank you, Chair. I was gonna hop in the last conversation, but, it was kind of moving along. I did want to mention something, and I think it's fair, it's only fair for me to mention, that I did have feedback, whether it wasn't much, but there was feedback for concern of voter suppression as well, and I think it's just fair that I mention that. It's not just Mrs. Bedevic saying that. One of the other things I wanted to mention is one of the charter amendments is to change when the commission is appointed to mitigate these timely concerns in the future, which is awesome, but it addresses the reason we kind of skipped. Going to my next thing, the special meeting is just circumventing. We're just looking at 3 readings. The special meeting is just circumventing the time afforded for the public to educate themselves on the matter. It's not necessarily they're going to oppose it. It's just that we should be having conversations through. And I just wanted to point that out, that I agree with every one of these things. I think they need to change. But the special meeting is literally just circumventing and the 3 reading. It's using the 3 reading as a loophole and not taking into account the time afforded to the citizen to educate themselves on the matter. And that's just it. I just wanted to kind of add a few things, input into some of these amendments.
Mr. President, can I make a comment, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Voter suppression is not defined by a pandemic. Voter suppression is done on purpose. It's a strategy. So I don't see this as voter suppression. I'm just voicing my opinion. Thank you.
I don't either, to be truthful with you. I would like to know, if we go 3 readings and the public, okay, how are we gonna get the public the information to do this? To talk about this, to say what they wanna do. Mrs. DeBevick?
I'm sorry, it took me just a minute to comprehend what Mrs. Doherty say. And so I guess what I'm looking at is that when I say voter suppression, if you look at what just happened in Kentucky, for example,
Right.
for the primary, given the
Right, and that's where they closed,
pandemic.
I don't know, a gazillion% of their voting.
Right, but how do we know if there's a pandemic that that's not gonna happen here? That's why I'm saying, we don't know what November is gonna bring.
I don't believe those were closed due to the pandemic.
Fair enough. What, she said it wasn't, she doesn't believe they were closed due to the pandemic, but I do know that some areas literally went from, I can't remember the numbers, but a ton of polling locations where some neighborhoods were gonna have, there were over 500,000 registered voters for one polling location.
That is true.
And that's horrid, and I didn't realize it wasn't as a result of the pandemic.
No, it's, that's how it's coming
It's typically a strategy by elected officials or other officials. It's not, that's the way I understand it.
Well, and our poll workers in this area, let's be real, I mean, our poll workers are elderly, are in a population that is at risk. So
That could be, but I still, from the common definition as I know it, doesn't apply to voter suppression. That would be,
maybe I'm using the incorrect term then, but my thought process is I'm concerned that we don't know what November's gonna bring. Our voting, our poll workers are generally elderly, in a population that's at risk. And, you know, that could potentially happen, so.
Therefore, we should be encouraging people to request their ballots so that they can vote by mail. That's what we can do, on our side to make sure that people do get out to vote.
Do we have any more discussion? Mrs. Fox, what's the dates for the next, the other two readings?
Okay, today's the 6th, the 13th, 20th, and 27th, right?
No,
13th, 27th, and the 3rd.
Legislative,
yes.
so it'd be the 13th and 27th.
13th
And then we're gonna have a special.
Special on the 3rd.
Yeah.
So there will be 3 poll readings, so we aren't doing a reading tonight.
No, tonight's just committee of the whole, well, we have one piece of legislation for legislative, that's the special meeting.
Oh, yeah.
For the,
Yeah, we're back to our normal schedule, which is committee of the whole first and third,
Fair enough.
legislative second and fourth.
Okay.
Okay, is there anything else? I have a
Mr.
motion.
President,
Yes, dear.
may I say something?
Yes.
Every 4 years, when it's a presidential, people in wheelchairs and walkers and whatnot, they vote. The citizens of this, United States, they take that very seriously. So you see where every 4 years, you have a higher rate of voters compared to the off season. And I think that, absentee, and some of them that don't like absentee, they will be there to balance the vote. It's the presidential. That's a big thing, and that's what the citizens look forward to every 4 years. So I don't think we really have to worry about, people not going to the polls. I think that, they know as a citizen, this is their responsibility, and it's a big deal for the president every 4 years. So my opinion is they will get to they'll vote somehow by mail, absentee, or they'll be there in person. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Angelo.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'd like to correct myself. It was related somewhat to the coronavirus. I wanted to say this on the record because I brought it up. However, when you cut a state's polling locations by 95%, you really have to look at the math and the statistics on how many of the population were COVID positive to see how this really, was it necessary to cut it by 95%. I stand by the fact that I believe it had maybe more to do with a strategy versus the pandemic itself. I mean, you have to believe that 95% of the population was positive or something like that. I don't know what the math could be, but it just seems outrageous that one county with 616,000
It was very disturbing what happened in Kentucky. It
We're
was very
excluded from voting, it just doesn't make any sense, other than to think there perhaps, I'm not saying there was, but perhaps there was an element of a strategy to it. When you have to cut it by 95%, that's pretty extreme.
Well, and I guess I didn't know what role the fact that the people that do work with polls are in an at-risk category, maybe they couldn't get work. I don't know what all of the elements were, but, so when I'm saying voter suppression, I guess it's not maybe in the typical terms, but we don't know what November's gonna bring.
No, I understand that. And I just wanted to set things. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Hardy?
Just to piggyback what Mr. Meadows, Ms. Angeloff, and everybody else said, 2016, just fun looking at the Board of Elections for the presidential election year in November, there was a 73% turnout. So that's probably the highest I've ever seen in any election in my life in Summit County. So they do come out and vote for the presidency as it's safe.
Was it Barberton or Summit
It
County?
was all of Summit County. I've never seen one over 40.
It's a high percentage.
What was Barberton?
I'd have to look at.
That's good.
I'll
You know,
I'll
I
get-
can
I'll
look
get it to you,
myself.
but-
I'm okay, I can.
If that's all, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
A second?
I'll second that, sir.
Okay, we'll adjourn at 6:55.
Okay, next up is city utilities and Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. City utilities will commence at 6:55. All members are present and guests as noted. We have a late request for legislation in which we have to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. This is a draft ordinance titled Appropriation Stormwater. Do I have a motion to do that?
I will make a motion, Mrs. Coburn.
I will second it.
We have a motion by Carol Fry, second by Colin Devitt to invoke the rule 702 to suspend Rule 302. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this is a draft ordinance appropriating $594,571.25 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the stormwater capital budget of the FEMA fund. Be referred to finance. Does somebody want to explain this?
I'll start and I'll let Jeremy finish it off.
Okay.
So as part of the hazard mitigation grant for 14th Street, all the funds, the expenditures, and the incoming revenues have to come through a specific fund, a FEMA fund. So this appropriation is creating that fund, and the money will be appropriated into that fund for use during this project, and it will be reimbursed as the monies are used. So we want to get this in place because we have put an RFP out for the appraisals. We've selected an appraiser, and now to keep moving forward, eventually soon here, we will have some expenditures involved, probably in the month of August when council is not meeting. So I want to make sure that that is in place so we can continue the project. You want to add anything to that, Jeremy?
No, you basically covered why we need to do the appropriation. Just so there is the appropriations there so we can pay any sort of expenditures that come up with the purchase of the properties on 14th Street from that FEMA flood mitigation grant.
Okay, any questions? This is monies to purchase the houses that signed up for the FEMA buyout on 14th Street in the floodplain. There were 14 homes that signed up, and this is the beginning of them having funds so that they can hire the person that will do the evaluations and then to purchase those homes. Anybody on the committee have any questions? Anybody else in council? Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. Wasn't this dollar amount dictated by the number of homes already
The
that
grant,
agreed to it?
the grant was started at 1.5 million or 1.7 million for the whole street, and then depending on how many homes signed up, it was reduced by the amount of homes.
So what if the appraisal's higher than the number we got here? Oh, I know it's pretty high, number, but I'm just saying it kind of seems like it's a little backwards a little bit. And I'm just.
This is we're not gonna jump in. So there is a budget built for this, and just like we make a budget, there's a budget with some leeway for all those appraisals to be different. So in the budget, there's appraisals, acquisitions, relocation assistance, there's closing costs, abatement, demolition, restoration, everything is included in the budget. So they take into account for market fluctuations and things like that in the budget. I can tell you right now, the budget is more than adequate for the project.
Okay, I happen to know that this budget came from the number of homes that agreed to it, so I didn't know how it.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion to call for it.
We have a motion by Carol Fry,
I will second it.
seconded by Carla DeBevick. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. We have a second draft ordinance tonight that we have to invoke Rule 702 to suspend Rule 302.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Carol Fry. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. This draft ordinance is titled Utility Assessment Delinquent Water, authorizing and directing the city of Barberton to certify to the Summit County Auditor special assessment against certain properties for unpaid utility services, which will include amounts more than 60 days past due and will include charges through August 21st, 2020. We do this every year, and we tend to get the past due amounts paid up rather quickly before it's assessed to properties. Are there any questions about this one? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mrs. Coburn. My concern is that, and I don't know if Mr. Weaver can attest to this, do we have, are collections down for our water bill right now as a result of unemployment, and are we going to give people the opportunity to get back to work and pay, or is it just gonna go automatically to their taxes?
Actually, we're gonna be, we're gonna be pretty lenient with people. Starting July 10th, the order preventing us from turning off utilities is lifted. We're not going to make a change with that until August 10th. So that, the public has a chance to be notified of that. And will not be turning off any utilities following August 10th that pay at least the current bill plus something. It could be $1, So we want to work with people, and we're going to keep that in place at least till the end of the year. Now, as far as assessments are concerned, the assessments are going to look very different this year than they have in years past. We're looking at delinquent finals, and most of those are rentals where a landlord has requested a final bill, and then those go for past 60 days and they remain unpaid. So in those cases, it's the same landowner and with unpaid bills. So those would go to assessment if the landlord does not pay that prior to. There are some cases where it could be the new property owner, because most title agencies will, they'll pay those at the time of property transfer. And actually, in most real estate transactions anymore, there's money set aside for the municipal utility bill. In some cases, the check that was sent bounced, And so we immediately notify the title agency and the real estate agencies. Sometimes they don't get made up in time and the property transfers and we still haven't been paid. So those can be assessed as well. But it'll be those plus sewer only accounts. Sewer only accounts we can't shut off. So, and there's quite a few of those that we get paid when we assess, or, with the assessment itself, or when the assessment is done. So that's the way we get those paid many times. So I didn't want those to pass another year and go behind 2 years. But so there'll be far fewer assessed this year is the point. We're not going to go after all of them that we would typically. So, but to answer your question, are the assessments, are they higher? There'll be less of them this year, but delinquencies are actually higher. So last month, they were over $400,000, so those have jumped, probably close to $100,000 since the beginning of the whole COVID.
Well, I guess that was my concern,
And that's why we're doing less.
Forward, I don't want to assess taxes to somebody's property taxes if they just need to get back to work. So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't our.
And, people, if they contact us or make arrangements, we will work with them and, that they would not see an assessment. But there's very few that are going to assessment this year, compared to normal.
Can
Yes, go ahead.
How much, do you think is going to assessment?
I don't know. It's difficult to run a report, and we've been working with finance on that, and it's not gonna be easy, so much of it's gonna be done by hand. We're gonna have to hand sort a lot of this because of we're not doing just running, we're just not gonna run a report and put those on the assessment. It's gonna be much more work than normal. So I don't have a good number for that.
Because that's a substantial amount of money, especially with the revenue crunch that we're in. And I realize, I've mentioned COVID tonight. I know that these are different circumstances, but I think we have this even in non-COVID years. And this is probably somewhere where we have to improve on collections.
Yeah.
Greg? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add to Danny's comments that, we're ultra sensitive to the economic climate right now. And we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to get caught up on any of their utility bills. And we've been in contact, Danny, myself, with a number of different utilities, trying to put together the best plans that kind of tailor to our own communities and our own water systems. And so as we make these decisions, we have the residents and businesses in mind, but we also have to run a utility. So, at some point, we have to bring that revenue in slowly to make up for a period of lost revenue. It appears already that we're already making some headway with the turnaround in the economy. And I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, but I think we're about right where we need to be revenue-wise right now.
Water's a lot closer than sewer, but we're over $150,000 off on the sewer fund. We had about $1 million in reserve going into the year, so it's off more than I'd like to see, but we're still healthy.
And there's still opportunity for recovery. There's still 6 months left in the year, so we're working with Akron and a couple other utilities to try to figure out the best way to approach this type of stuff.
Thank you. Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mr. Weaver, and on the explanation of the COVID and revenue. This couldn't have come at a worse time, really, to present this, but in my opinion, I get it, we do it every year. So I'm looking at the unemployment numbers for Ohio as of April. Well, let's say December 2019, we were at a 4.1. April, we're at 17. May, I think we're at a 13.7. percent interest. With that said, I mean, you guys just expressed your willingness to work with the community. Would you guys be willing to keep us updated on any programs? I would like to see a program put in place specifically for payments. I don't know, maybe we have one, but specifically for this. I would hate the idea of even someone being hit economically from July 10th on, or even before, up to August 10th, and to have a lien put on their house because they can't get work due to this. And you is heartbreaking, but you've expressed your willingness to work with the community. But I would like to see an actual program for this, like an actual, maybe dedicated program for helping people get back to par. But that's just where I stand. I seen this and I was like, oh my gosh, are we really gonna look at this right now?
I know that our water department, that those ladies have an entire list of areas that they can send people to. If you ever are in need and you talk to them, they have every available option right there that they can send our people to for help. And I know that they are willing to help through, like you said, your current bill plus $1 is what he just said. So I know that they do work with our people. So as far as setting up another program, I'm not sure that we have the manpower to work up another whole program compared to what.
Maybe what I suggest is maybe something that we could follow. What can we tell people when they say, I can't do this? I just want to be able to answer somebody when they say, are we really looking at putting liens on houses for unpaid water bills right now?
Wait, he's talking about landlords that.
It doesn't say
It doesn't
landlords
say, so
here.
that was gonna be my next
It
question.
doesn't
Are we
say
gonna change the wording for this then to ensure that we aren't, our plan isn't to do what Mr. Greer is?
And I don't think we are. I don't think we
I don't
would.
think so either.
It's just gonna be a concern. What do we tell people do we tell them to call the water department to set up a payment plan?
Yeah.
Is that what?
Yeah, they already do that, correct. So there's already plans in place. Like Mrs. Copeland said, there's a list of different opportunities for people to either make a plan or get funding from other sources to help pay their bills. And, the one thing he mentioned tonight was paying your current bill and then whatever you can on whatever your balance due is beyond your current bill. That's, and he alluded to the fact that it may go through the rest of the year. It may go more than the rest of the year. We don't know yet. It's still kind of a work in progress, which is part of the reason too that we decided, even though the EPA says on July 10th you can do shut-offs, that we're not going to do it. We're internally not doing anything until the 10th, but it may even go beyond that. That's just where we're at right now. We're still in the process of figuring out exactly what that program is going to be.
Thank you.
And if I may say something, Mrs. Colbert?
Yes, go ahead, Mrs. Angela.
Thank you very much. The experience that I had with 25 years at my employment in the city is that there are people that are in need to have utility bills, gas, electric, water, and they need help. At one time, we had a United Way that was right next door to our building. We would actually walk them over there and have them fill out an application to pay their water bill. Sometimes it's been very lax, and the city cannot any longer be the bank. You don't get that with the other utilities. We put people on payment plans, $10 a month, and they would never even pay the $10 a month. I think that, with Red Cross, United Way, and HEAP, and all of that, we have tried to, I personally, I'm just going to say me, personally, have helped people fill out applications and send them in and that type of thing. And so there are a lot of programs out there, and I know the past and present girls that work in utilities, they hear every story that you can imagine. And I'm not talking about the pandemic. That's over and beyond, and that's something that we can't control, and that we need to help our the people and give them telephone numbers that they could call and they could get some help. Thank you.
As I've been in the water department many times because I've been on utilities for 4 years, and I've stopped in there on purpose to see how they handle things. And beyond, they really do have stacks and stacks of opportunities to help people that are in need. You can't imagine the statements people will make and what they need. And these girls up there and our people, the city employees up there, they have avenues beyond avenues that I even thought were possible. So I really think that our department is one of the best. And I really think they do reach out and do everything they can, to the point of going in the next room and crying because they feel so bad for not being able to help somebody. So they take their job very seriously. And they do try to do everything they can to help. So can I have a motion to call for this?
I will make a motion to call for this.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Carol Fry first and Carla DeBevick second. Do I take a vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, do we have any other miscellaneous discussion? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
We are adjourned at 7:17.
Finance personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is July 6th, Monday. It is 7:18, and we are starting the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. All members of the committee are present, with the exception of Nina Angeloff. She is on the phone, so she actually is present, but she's not in the room. All council members are present, as well as others noted on my sheet. We have quite a few requests for legislation tonight. The first is a draft ordinance titled COVID-19 Local Government Payroll Support Grant Program. This ordinance is requesting the city of Barberton to receive its share of funds from the county COVID-19 Local Government Payroll Support Grant Program funds. Who would like to comment on that? Would Jeremy?
Yes, last time we met, the last legislators meeting, I asked for a resolution to be passed for CARES Act money. This, once again, is another resolution, but this CARES Act money is actually coming from the county. Part of the CARES Act program, if municipality, county, if they had a certain population, they were entitled to CARES Act money. Summit County was one of, I want to say, 4 counties in the state of Ohio that did receive CARES Act money. So they wanted to come up with a program to distribute the money to the villages, townships, and cities within Summit County. They came up with a local government payroll support program. Basically, it was going to pay for the regular wages for police and fire, because they received guidance that they were substantially dedicated to helping prevent the spread of COVID-19, the public safety forces. So after I submitted this to council, just to give everyone an update, the Ohio Office of Budget and Management kind of changed their thoughts on the process and said that, no, that's not what it's meant for. It's not a payroll support program. Well, then the county has reached out to several other places. They're showing articles where other states are using it as a payroll support program. And so The state auditors kind of changed their stance and said, well, yeah, you can use it for payroll. However, you need detailed records that these public safety workers are dedicating at least 50% of their time to mitigating COVID-19. And so with that, the state auditor's office is having a call with the national auditor's office along with the treasury this week to receive the guidance. Summit County still wants us to proceed with this resolution and the creation of the fund. That way, if what they're hoping comes true is their program get back on track the way they envisioned it. Because without that program being the way that Summit County envisioned it, majority of the townships, villages, cities that receive CARES Act money from the state and from this payroll support program from the county, most of that money will go unused. Because basically right now the guidance is you can only use it on COVID-related supplies. So Summit County is really pushing, along with other entities, are really pushing for this payroll support program because it would be a huge help for not only us, but other cities, villages, and townships within Summit County. So I'm still wanting to proceed with this resolution. Summit County has an August 15th deadline to get everything turned in. I want to make sure we have everything passed and turned into Summit County. That way, when they're ready to distribute funds, we have everything turned into them, and there's no hold up on that. And hopefully, in that process, we get further clarification from the Treasury and the national auditors and the state auditors that it can go back to the way Summit County was envisioning it, that it can be used for regular wages for police and fire, the public safety, to help be a payroll support program for them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Flaker. So what you're saying is that we're going to pass this, but we won't know the rules and the regulations or the amount of money that we're going to receive until after.
Well,
Auditors. And,
the amount of money is going to be roughly $700,000 from the county.
okay.
We received $995,000 roughly from the state for the CARES Act. So the county's going to throw in, or they're going to be giving out roughly about $700,000, a little more than that, to the city for this program. So in total, it's roughly about 1.7 million between the state and county that the city will receive.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, do I have, does anybody else have any questions?
Well, I guess it's kind of combined with later legislation here, but I'll just ask it now because we're talking about it. So, as far as the wages go, if we do have to provide detailed records, well, first of all, other states are using it in this capacity.
That is my understanding, correct. There's a few states that are using it in this capacity.
Okay, and then, do you know if it's possible to use this money, to pay our portion of what we paid Summit County for maintaining the health department?
I would have to check with Summit County. They never said anything in the meetings that we've had with them on using their portion of the CARES Act money that they're going to be giving to the cities, villages, and townships to use the money in that manner. I can reach out to Summit County to see if maybe that is possible. But even then, it will still go back to then Summit County proving that our portion, that the workers there are substantially dedicated, which they should be.
I was gonna say, I would say that would be.
I would say
fairly
majority of
simple.
the workers right now are working on COVID-related stuff, so that probably wouldn't be an issue. But yeah, I could reach out to the county and see what they say about that.
And then also if, other, say, for example, someone from that works in the parks department, cleans up the park and hoses down the equipment. I mean, I would say that that's part of mitigating COVID as well. So then that portion of that salary could potentially be accounted for also, or is it just?
Correct. It's not, the CARES Act money is not just dedicated to police and fire. If we have an employee, say for instance, I go and decide one of my employees in the finance department, I'm gonna make them be the disinfected person for the entire city. Their job is substantially dedicated to mitigating COVID-19. So at that point, their wages, and their roll-up costs in those wages are part, that they would classify under the CARES Act to being able to be reimbursed. The city could be reimbursed for those. So it's just not for police and fire. The county was making it for basically just police and fire because they know all the villages, townships, and cities, they have police and fire districts that would use up all that money easily, that they would be handing out to the various subdivisions.
I have another question for you, Jeremy. It says this ordinance is to get our share of the funds.
Mhm.
But do you have to justify the amount of money that we get? Like, do you have to fill out an application and say, this employee did this and this and this, and we should get this much to be reimbursed for them, and the police and fire department did this, this, and this?
Yeah, so if this program goes through like they envision, I will have to turn over payroll reports to the county, showing the police, the employees that work their regular hours, what their wages were, what the roll-up costs are, such as Medicare, severance, and all that. Get that all sent over to Summit County saying, hey, this is what we used. I'm not sure if Summit County, I think they want to do like one distribution right up front, and then we just turn in the supporting document until we reach that number that they gave us. So that's how my understanding how the program's going to work.
That was kind of the point of my question. If you don't hit that number, do we have to send that portion back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. With either of the CARES Act money, the state, if the money is unencumbered by, I want to say mid-October, I want to say October 15th, that money has to be returned to the state. The county, since if the county can proceed with their program as planned, the money that is unused with them doesn't have to be returned until middle or end of December. Just for the main fact, the difference is the money has to be encumbered. They're saying that if we're paying wages, basically, if we're gonna pay wages, that money's already encumbered.
Right.
So that's why they're putting a date that we have to pay it back, not until December. However, if the guidance does get changed, yes, we could have to pay it back in October.
Okay.
Of what's not encumbered.
Thank you so much.
And just so everyone knows, the guidance is very, very important. We don't have to prove to Summit County that the reimbursement is COVID related. We have to prove to the state auditors, and they could be here this time next year. So we could be 6 months into 2021, and the state says, no, this expense over here, we don't deem that COVID related, you owe us the money back. So that's why the guidance is very, very important, that it's black and white, there's no gray. And as Mr. Flaker said, the county is fighting on everyone's behalf to just kind of follow what the other states have already allowed.
Right.
But we don't want to get jammed up. The state doesn't want to get jammed up by the feds. So it's all this back and forth, and it's been very trying, because we'll get updates at 9 a.m., let's say, and then by 2 or 3 o'clock the same day, they change. So I agree, and I hope the council passes these 2 pieces of legislation, just so we're on track to receive the money, and then as the guidance comes down, and it may change several more times, that we're prepared to go.
But at least we'll get something. if we have all of our paperwork in order. All right,
I just have one more question for Jerry. Do you believe that the $1.7 million total that we're slated to receive, if it can be used in this manner? In my opinion, I'm asking what your opinion is. Do you think that we should be able to utilize all of it, correct, for wages and?
Yeah, because it goes back to March 1st when we can start using this money. So in that sense, if we use it for police and fire wages, personnel costs for police and fire this past year were almost $11 million. So, yeah, 1.7 million to try to cover 9 months.
So we would not, if it can be used in that capacity, we would not be returning
Yeah,
any money.
if we use it in the payroll support program capacity, we should not be returning any money to this state or the county.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Davitt
And I will second.
and seconded by Mrs. Angela. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, the second piece of legislation is a draft ordinance titled Create New Fund, Summit County COVID-19 PSGP Fund, authorizing the Director of Finance to create a new fund, the Summit County COVID-19 PSGP Fund. And I imagine this fund is for the money that we have just been discussing for the last 20 minutes, right?
Correct. Just
Okay,
like,
so it has to have a specific fund for the money to be received, and also things would be paid out of that, or we'd be reimbursed, we could reimburse the departments out of that fund. Does anybody have any questions about this piece of legislation?
I'll make a motion that we call for it.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. DeBevick,
I will second it.
seconded by Mrs. Angeloff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. We have a late request for legislation, and we must invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. And this is for a draft of ordinance titled Tax Levy Resolution of Necessity. A resolution of necessity to levy an additional 3 mills of tax to ensure sufficient funds for current operating expenses of the city, and requesting that the county auditor to certify the total current tax valuation of the city and amount of annual revenue that will be generated by the proposed 3 mill increase. Do I have a motion to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302 to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Medges. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Angela. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 No.
Okay. Okay, are there any questions about this piece of legislation? All right, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Medges, seconded by, do I have a second? I'll second it. All in favor signify by saying aye.
No.
Aye.
All right, we have another piece of legislation that we must invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. And this is a draft ordinance titled Authorized Payment Kenmore Construction Company, authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Kenmore Construction Company in the amount of $40,693.54 for the emergency repairs to a collapsed 8-inch sanitary sewer on Miami Avenue. Can I have a motion to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302?
I'll make that.
Motion made by Mrs. Angela,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Medges. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, this repair happened, I think last June. And so, yeah, the date of the invoice was 6/14/2019. And, since the invoice is, over $3,000 and it was all the way back from June, we need to pass an ordinance to pay this. Do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I just have a question. I'm just curious why why it took a year to receive an invoice for the repair.
So I actually think that this repair was actually done in February of 19. The invoice wasn't received until June. So I think a PO was made, and at some point it was closed by accident. So we had a PO in place, but then because of the length between the time the job was done and the invoice came in, there was probably a review of POs and it just got closed by accident. So unfortunately, it's just that the time between the two events is leading us to this event tonight.
Right.
And I believe that we are eligible we applied for a grant for this, for reimbursement as well.
Yeah, I applied for an emergency grant through the state of Ohio, which we was awarded. So we will be receiving a portion of this back.
$37,250.
Yes.
So
We'll get back
the majority of it we'll get back. Yeah.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, the majority of it we'll get back, over $37,000.
So then we'll be under the amount that you needed to ask us for.
Right.
Right.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work out.
Okay. Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion made by Carla Bevick,
And I will second.
second by Mrs. Angeloff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we have yet another piece of legislation that we need to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. This piece of legislation is a draft ordinance titled Appropriation Stormwater, appropriating $594,571.25 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the stormwater capital budget of the FEMA fund. And this was referred from utilities. Do I have a motion to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mrs. DeBevick.
And I
Second,
will second.
second by Mrs. Angeloff. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, does anyone have any questions? I think basically they were all answered when Joyce introduced this piece of legislation. So no one has any? Okay, so do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Mr. Medges, seconded
And I
by
will second.
Mrs. Angeloff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, then we have one piece of current legislation. This was called for on 6/22/2020, and it is ordinance number 71/2020, titled Appropriation for the Fire Department. And I believe that's,
$8,750.
yeah, that's,
From the fire capital levy to the, to the fire department capital budget.
and that was for that disinfecting thing.
Yeah, it was reimbursed.
Yeah. Okay, and we'll be voting on that next week, we don't have to get it out of committee. So are there any miscellaneous items that anyone would like to discuss? No?
I would be very quick. I voted no this evening on, just because once I second, I can't speak during legislative. But I voted no this evening on, the, late request for the additional tax levy, resolution of necessity. Not necessarily because I don't want it to go to the voters, but, I would kind of like to see, I know we're really on a time crunch. I would prefer to have a special meeting, once we find out if we can indeed use the money, get some clarification. Mr. Flaker indicated when I met with him last week that they were meeting this week with the auditors, and we might have some clarification on that 1.7 million, which, could help us, get through and provide us with give us time to get some actual numbers. And Jeremy and I, Mr. Flaker and I also discussed, that I think we are saving some money during COVID. There are things that are in the budget that we have not expended because of COVID, like, the amount that we had for ball field, summer help. These are just a few examples, of the concert series. So we don't really know what we need. And if we're gonna go out and campaign for this levy to our constituents, I want to be able to convey that. So that's, okay, Alex?
Yeah, maybe I could speak to that concern. I think with the resolution of necessity, all it does is trigger the county auditor to provide that specific information in terms of annual revenue, number of bills, how much the proposed increase would generate. From there, and that's the requirement in order to place something on a ballot, you need to do that first. You have to pass a second resolution to actually put it on the ballot. So by passing the resolution of necessity, all you're doing is triggering the request of the auditor. From there, you can decide to take no further action. But if you pass this resolution, at least you have the option to make it in time for the ballot. So that's why I think I helped draft that first, because you could take it under advisement from the county. Council can elect to do nothing with it, that's fine, but at least you're doing so in a timely manner that if you did want to take the second step, you can do so within the statutory timeframe to have it placed on the ballot.
Thank you, Alex. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, was that the last question then? Oh, yeah.
Mrs. Prime,
Yes, you can speak.
the resolution of necessity is, if I'm correct, that's exactly what we need so we can go forward if we decide on property tax or a mill. Is that correct? We need to do this step first so we can have the certification from the fiscal officer.
Yes, and that is why we were doing it tonight, because we are on we have a limited time frame, and if we don't get this passed, nothing goes any further. So, we're eliminating another option to bring in revenue. No matter what we get from COVID, I don't think that is really a factor, because we were in trouble before, and we're gonna be in trouble in January. And if you were running a budget for your own household, and you said, oh, I'm $20 short, would you rather just get $20, or would you rather get $100 and then you have 80 ahead? Because we're in trouble. We have hiring to do, we have departments that are bare bones, and I don't know how we're ever gonna get out of this.
I mean, I guess given your example, we're asking residents, well, we just wanna we only need $20, but we just wanna feel comfortable, so we want $100. But what happens when they can't buy food, they can't pay their rent, they can't, you know what I mean? It's not about, I don't know. I received a lot of phone calls, I don't know if anybody else did, but I received some phone calls, wanting to know what we needed, and if this covered what we needed, and, I couldn't answer them.
The strange thing is you already got phone calls, which is another issue. This should not have even been public before we had a meeting and discussed what we were going to do. I don't think that you should put polls out there and ask what people think if we haven't even taken any action yet. Because you're already skewing public opinion, or it's like
I
you're
didn't put
saying.
in, I didn't put.
No, but I'm
I
just
put
saying,
phone
I'm
calls.
just saying it's already out there.
You put that towards Justin Greer's poll?
Yes, and I didn't
Justin,
even
what do you
see
think
the
about
poll,
that?
but I've heard about the poll.
What do you think about that, Mr. Greer?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't,
I don't think that,
that.
you know, I'm not trying to be secretive, but on the same token, why should you start getting complaints before you've even done anything? We had not even discussed it. We discussed it in December.
We did discuss it.
In December,
I have an email thread saying we discussed it last week.
at a meeting,
In a public email, we discussed it, and I told, I believe it was you in an email, I would support a 3-year levy. In agreement, we're all gonna.
all right, it was a public record. It wasn't a public email
And
out
I'm gonna
to
get my
everyone.
fill. I was elected because of the stuff that I did. I'm open. I didn't say that's what we're gonna do.
Well,
I didn't sway opinion. I just asked people.
Well, it doesn't matter because in the end, people do get to vote on it. That's all I'm saying, but I'm saying people are starting to say, oh, I got phone calls and everything. And, you know, really, I don't usually get phone calls unless it's already been a public topic.
You get used to it. Because it's gonna happen more.
Well, the bad part is, with all due respect, the bad part is that we were introducing it tonight and passing it tonight. So how?
We're passing the resolution tonight. We're
Well,
not
I know,
passing the ballot
you're just
issue.
saying that we aren't discussing, we were discussing, he shouldn't have done that. And I'm not pulling what he did, I don't know what he did, I didn't see it, I didn't vote on it, I'm just saying that I received emails, I don't know if anybody else here received emails, but I can forward the emails that I received on my city email from people, and I received phone calls. I didn't perpetuate those, I received them. I can't control, that's my job.
I'm not saying there's anything, but I would like to see the emails.
I will
See what they
forward
say.
you the emails.
Because I got one email, which everybody
I
in
got
this room
two.
got.
I got two and I was the only name on both of them. There was no other attachments.
I thought you said you had 7.
No, I got 7 phone calls
Oh.
and 2 emails.
Okay.
So I will.
But at
forward
any
you
rate,
emails.
This is Fry.
yes,
You brought up, you said that if you were short $20, you know, you give an example. If you're short $20 and you get $20, you find a way to get another job to make that $20, not ask for handouts. And what this is, I'm not saying this is a handout, but what we're doing, going back to the people again. Instead of us doing our job, the administration doing their
well, what
job.
would you propose, Sean?
Okay.
Since you have brought that up,
Yes,
and you're going to the people, where are you gonna
We'll
get
find a
this
way.
second job?
that's their job. I mean, that's the administration's job to find out, the city leaders to do that, not us.
You're a city leader now.
You are
I'm
the
trying.
city
I
leader.
tried to bring 4 businesses in town, 4 of them. And they all said no. That was my job right there. I tried to bring 4 of them.
Mr. Hyde,
Thank
You no reply on that, Mrs.
I
Coburn? Okay, thank you.
did,
That was my
I
job.
did have,
excuse
I
me.
did have a
Yes.
breakdown.
I was finishing her question. Excuse me.
I did have a breakdown after talking to Director Flaker about the loss of BMW. It was roughly 560 jobs that averaged 90,000 a year salary. When people, I did post quite a bit of information. One of it was a breakdown that what I'm trying to convey to the citizens is that one job is not equal to another job. To give you an example, minimum wage at $8.70 in Ohio would be 20% of those jobs, the 560. To equal that, we would need to create 2,800 minimum wage jobs. Even if you had, and this goes with BWXT, $20 to $25 an hour, you'd be looking at 46 and 58%. You would need 1,218 to 966 jobs just to match what was gone in the snap of a finger. I do believe Mr. Jaber does have some concern with some businesses coming in, but we cannot make those numbers up in a year. I don't like new property taxes. I don't like any taxes. I abhor taxes. The COVID money is a shot in the arm. It is not going to be every year.
Exactly.
The COVID money, when it comes in, will help next year. if a property tax of 3 mills goes on this November and passes, if I'm not mistaken, we wouldn't be collecting until 2022.
No, we would collect, I think we would collect in July of next year,
In July of next year.
I believe.
So we'd still be about 6 months ahead. If this fails, then we have to look at some serious options here. And I have told people, some of the options of things that might have to be cut are not going to make them happy.
And what are your ideas about some of the things to cut?
It's not my position to, but if I could, just in my business, I have to look at assets versus liabilities and what I absolutely need to function and what I don't need to function. A lot of people will not like hearing what I have to say, but if this doesn't pass, then maybe it's time to lease out the parks to a nonprofit or.
I'm in agreement with that. I'm in agreement with getting rid of them.
Anything that comes out of the general fund, is generally police, fire, city workers, maintenance, things like that. I hate to put anybody's job over another, but we have to prioritize if things go south. In my business, if certain things go down, I have to find a way to pick the slack up, and unfortunately, I've had to cut some things. People aren't going to like hearing that, but that is the raw truth that, I will stick to my guns and say B&W, there was nothing we could do.
Attention all members, the line will be closing in 10 minutes. Thank you.
If you look at their stock, they're a sinking ship. They're at $2.45 a share, which after a 10-to-1 reverse stock split still puts them at 25 cents when they were in Barberton. I don't think that there's anything, I believe there's nothing Barberton could have done when a triage of entities stole them away from us to Akron. That's a real thing. And if we can't somehow compensate for that, then things are going to be lost in this city. And as anybody in any business and anybody in any facet of life can tell you, when you lose something, chances are you never get it back. So if the zero-sum hour came and we had to put on the ballot and it passed to sell parkland, then we really can't complain when a company or a for-profit company starts charging us to use that parkland or somehow decides to develop it. If certain things are, other safety forces are lost and our insurances go up because of response times, because of not having it, then that's going to be it. There are consequences and there are pros, but I champion having an expiration date because I think we can work through in 3 years some form of solution. We can't do it in 1 year.
So
we can't do it in 2 years.
In some ways, you are for going for the tax.
I am for it because we have no choice in this.
We have no other options. It's not like I'm tax crazy, but
We could roll back the tax credit to 100%, and it wouldn't make what we need. Without this and without certain other things, without cuts, when we go down to bare bones, I've spoken with different people about it. Maybe it's time to expand our tax base and what we can develop, and maybe next year it's time to explore the merger again with North. Because
the thing
they
is,
have land, we have services. We can't, if you want to put 2,800 minimum wage jobs or even 1,600 15-hour jobs, tell me where in the city has room to put those. We can't do this overnight as it was stolen from us.
we can't do anything overnight. And this putting the tax on the ballot, if we get that far, that is just one way of trying to see where we stand, because it may fail. But if it does fail, then at least you know where you stand. You need more than $20. You know, it's a way of testing the waters to see if that is a way that we should go. Somebody Mrs. Doherty.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick, I'd like to thank you for your thoughtful response there. That's a lot of what you said I totally agree with. I just want you to please take time to visit my office so that we can talk about the workforce and the numbers. We're at bare bones. And to suggest cutting more positions is very, very difficult if we're going to continue to operate as a functioning city.
And I agree with that, and that's why I said that things get cut more, then people don't realize what they're losing. Because if you do have to cut more, that takes a lot of functions away from it.
We have an obligation to have, we've accepted the obligation to have a safety force, police and fire. We have to make sure that we are covering our city in a safe manner. So I just would invite you to come see me, any of you.
Which is why I
And
said
can
the
go over
unfortunate
those numbers.
situation is prioritizing what we have to do versus what we don't literally have to do. And that's a sorry place to be in, but that's,
We're there.
yes.
We are there, and that is the reason that I am passionate about at least getting it on the ballot. Because at least you're giving them an opportunity to vote on it. You're giving them an opportunity to weigh in. You're giving them the opportunity to say, well, we don't even care about the city. We're not paying any more taxes. We're not doing this, we're not doing that. And it lets you see where we have to go with that. Because we're gonna have opposition to anything that we propose. If this doesn't go, then you're gonna have to go with the rollback. And we're gonna get a lot of opposition from that. So this kind of spreads it out to everybody. And it's not even the amount of money that we need, but it's just a
You're
try.
right, and that's what part of my concern is that we're gonna sell this to the citizens and they're gonna think nothing's gonna change. But we can't ensure that, because we don't know what we need. Now, you just mentioned that you know what we need. We definitely need this amount, but we haven't, have you seen numbers I haven't seen? In 2020, we restored our budget to the same function as it was in 2018, fully. We restored gym members, we restored things. We knew B&W was leaving. If they were leaving, we've already taken those items away. Why did we restore them? And I think it has to be numbers based, and that's just my opinion, so.
Numbers based meaning what?
We have to have numbers. So Mr. Flaker, can you tell if we've received any income tax from B&W since January 1st?
I would have to look at once I get the latest CCA report, if we did, it's very, very little. They always send me a list of the top 25, tax withholders in this, for the previous year and compare them to the current year. And I know, if I remember looking at that report last, it's very, 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 very little.
You know, the reason I ask is because several people I ran into said that they were still working in the building in Barberton, so I was just curious. I don't know to what extent. I didn't get into detail with that. So.
Chairwoman?
Yes, I'm sorry.
B&W did have about 10 employees or so cleaning up and working in 2020 at their facility here in Barberton. The property did not change hands until March, April of this year. So they did have a few employees, about 10, coming and going. I don't know if they were full-time and how long they stayed, if they stayed until the property changed hands or not, but there were a few this year, about 10 working at the facility cleaning up. To Mr. Heineck's point, the figures you used earlier from Mr. Flaker were from 2019?
Well, that was from the letter that B&W sent when they were leaving.
Yeah.
I think that was 2018.
2018?
When they sent that letter.
What's not included in those numbers, before that, there was a position at the Barberton facility, the head of HR for all of Babcock's Wilcox throughout the world. That position paid the city in income taxes about $32,000 itself. They did away with the position. Nothing no one could do. That was an internal decision made by B&W. So that one employee paid the city $32,000, gone. So, we have absorbed. You've asked, what have we done?
Attention all YMCA members, the Y will be closing in 5 minutes. Please gather your belongings and head towards the exit. Thank you.
What have we done if we restored the budget to 2018? This was in the budget packets over the last few years. This was all gone over during the budget process. We displaced some employees, some permanently, which really helped the general fund. So this money, if this passes, this would help the general fund. So, Mr. Greer asked, Well, we've got to make a case to the voters. It's capped at 3 mills, it's capped at 3 years. What could be cut if this doesn't pass? And, there's no answer right now. Police and fire are only the two departments that are 100% general fund. Now, with that statement, I'm not saying that that's going to be cut. I'm just stating fact. So we have to look at everything. We are bare bones. Several administrations ago, we used to do driving agreements with the city crews. That got cut. We still get calls today. Well, can you come be my driving? We don't do that anymore. And people don't realize that. Can you come pick up sticks? I bag them all up. Can you pick up sticks on the side of the road? No, we don't do that anymore. We used to have a chipper. We used to do that. So services have been lost over the years. And I don't know at that time if the administration or council made it public, but services like that have been lost. More recently, we did displace employees, so that did free up money in the general fund. The general lighting utility, which by ORC we're allowed to do with council permission, which we did. If you go to other communities, City of Akron, for example, they use the ORC on assessments for everything. I was talking to one individual who has 2, sometimes 3 people staying at their house. Their sewer bill alone was $120 for the month, and then you add in water and everything else. Plus, sidewalks and streets and lights and snow removal and leaf removal and all those things. So I'm not saying that lessens the burden if this passes on Barberton residents. I'm just saying in comparison, Barberton is more affordable than some of the surrounding communities. Not that may change or sway someone's vote at the ballot box. We talk about bringing in new business. We still have to abide by the development code. Those individuals never contacted me. I don't know what their payroll is. So for simplicity reasons, it's easy math. For every $50,000 someone earns, that's only $1,000 a year they pay the city. So that goes for all general fund expenses. So that's not a lot of money. Again, I've always stated, I don't want to tax people more. I don't think any of you guys want to tax anyone. I've said that for years. But this is how municipalities make their living. Okay, this is the bread and butter. Income tax, and then we have the ability to go for property tax. Just like counties, their bread and butter is sales tax. And that's come up over the last 10 years several times to increase the sales tax. So no one wants to tax people more, but that's how we receive our money. I remember several years ago, people were complaining on social media that you can't run a city with grant money. Well, that's your tax dollars. You can let it go to another community, or you can let it come here. So we leverage our monies, our tax dollars, very, very well, very, very efficiently with grant money, whether it's county, state, or federal. So if this passes city council and goes to the voters, it's not going to be an easy sell. We all know that. And once we get the accurate numbers, I know that that's important. It's important to us as well. We'll get that information out. But the reason I sent that email out, we can't be blind to this. We have to live in reality. We have to do something. So we don't know the exact need, but we do know B&W is about $1.3 million gone. So we have to sell this together. This is what we're going to, this is the need. This is what we're asking. This is the time period, and this is how we're going to use it. Now, it may not fill all gaps. And Mr. Heidick, you're right. The CARES Act money, if that guidance changes, the 1.7 million, we can use that. That's a shot in the arm. That's a great thing. That's a shot in the arm. So, no one wants to tax anyone, but I think that this is the right course of action, and I think that we all need to be on the same page. And I can tell you from an economic development perspective, we're doing everything from the mom and pop shops to large corporations and everything in between. So we're working with site selectors, we're working with contractors, we're working with developers, we're looking at everything. So it's very important that we continue to move forward because we've got some great things going on in this community. There are some people that only want to dwell on the negative, but we've got a ton of money coming here for infrastructure. We've got a bunch of things that we're working on currently on infrastructure. We're really turning the page on the city of Barberton. So again, on the tax side, Mr. Heidick's numbers were correct, but there's more to the story because they've been laying off the B&W, a few here, a few there. Probably about 10, 15 years ago, they moved down their headquarters down to North Carolina, which was really hurt us. So this has been kind of a slow decline. And their stock was about $245 today, which is kind of, would you say, manipulated?
Because I'm the one reverse stock split.
Yeah, with the reverse stock split. So, no one wants to do a tax residence anymore. Putting it in their hands, educating them, and letting them make the decision. I think it's the best course of action, and then we'll see where we're at. So just a few comments on some of the other comments that were made.
Thank you.
Mrs. Fry, may I speak?
Sure. And then,
Thank you, Mayor. I know I can tell by your voice how frustrating it is. We don't have to be on the same page, and we have to be positive. We all love this town. We want to see this town prosper and go forward. And that's why it's so important to have this community improvement corporation to give that staff enough so they can get funding that Cotton Falls and Stowe and Green gets. Why can't we do this? Why can't we go reach out? You know, we need it, you know, as bad as all these other communities. And I think some of the stuff that we're going through, it is very important, but it is too, it's a tool. We need to branch out. We need to be able to get this funding with this community improvement corporation. You know, it's not like a private deed or behind anything. It's nothing like that. It's a tool that we can go out and get some federal grants. And I think that's what we need to look at with this. We need to work together and work with the mayor and administration. You can always do a hiring freeze, a wage freeze. We've gone through that before. And we went from 38, 40 people in the street department to 12. How much more can you cut? It's, there isn't, you just can't cut anymore. I don't want taxes, I never liked taxes, but put this on the ballot and let the people speak, and then we can go from there, along with COVID money and with the CIC, that we can get some funding from the federal government. Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah,
Mr. Coy?
if I may
Sure.
add some additional perspective, I think, according to the fiscal office, when I spoke with them on this issue, Barberton is low in terms of inside village, comparable to other municipalities. Still low, in fact, even that they thought it's possible that a potential 3 mil increase would actually still be under the 10 mil limitation under the Ohio Constitution, which actually means you wouldn't actually, you had the option to place it on the ballot, but council could pass a resolution in conjunction with their new annual budget, I believe, for the next year and increase the millage up to 10 inside village. So to keep that in perspective, I actually worked with Lodi and they increased theirs by 5 and they were already in excess of the 10 mil limitation. But just keep that in the back of your minds that if you pass this resolution of necessity for certification, the auditor is going to tell you what you have and what limits you have to raise if council so decided to within the limitation, at which point it's not even an issue for electors, though you could provide that issue on the ballot either way, whether you're in the limit or outside the limit.
Thank you very much. Okay, Justin.
Thank you, Chair. I know this is long-winded, but I also, on that note, I want to thank everybody for having the conversation. It's extremely important. I want to thank the mayor for his take on it and explaining some things. I think we need more of that from the administration. And kind of segueing into, this is going to be an uphill or a sell. I'm personally against the tax. But I'm not going to, if done right, I'm not going to stand in the way of a tax going to the voters at all. I don't care what it is. If it goes to the voters and they get to choose, then that's what it is. But there's a couple things from the poll that I got in feedback, and it started some conversation. It's going to be about how we're perceived in this whole thing. What have we done? We're going to have to be so brutally honest with people about, because let's be honest, this is any tax increase, the 3 mil 3-year tax increase is going to do nothing but just barely maintain what we have. Like, not even maintain. They're not going to get nothing. They're actually going to lose some stuff still with this. And how are you going to sell a tax thing and say you're not getting anything? So we're going to have to be so brutally honest. The one thing that our citizens are passionate about, but hands down is our safety forces. And our unions are gonna have to work together. They're gonna have to understand this. And we're gonna have to be so honest about this. If we're gonna lose 10 firefighters, we need to say it. But we can't beat around the bush. If we're gonna lose police, we need to say it. If our grass is gonna be 2 feet high in our parks again, we need to say it. We can't just assume that people, they're just gonna see it. We need to get ahead of it. And our services, we keep on, when I asked I wanted to know what services, because we say services all the time. What services? And then I was asked to make suggestions. I made suggestions, they happen to be a little off, but it boils down to our workforce, and we need our workers, because whether some of the suggestions I made were enterprise, like the street sweeper and stuff were ran through enterprise. If we don't have our workers, we don't have those services. Enterprise or not, it's just not gonna happen. So we are gonna have, I just wanna ask the admin and administration, us, just to be so honest about this, because this is gonna be a hard sell for the property tax. And if it does come to rolling back income tax to 100%, I will be here reminding people that we are not rulers, we are representatives of these people. And if they don't want it, we should not do it. So it's so honest to make sure that people are educated about this. And I just wanted to add that, I'm against this tax, but I'm not gonna stand in the way from this, I'm not gonna stand in the way from it going to the ballot. It's not my decision as a representative, so with that, thank you.
I appreciate everybody's input, and when you're talking about being brutally honest, during the COVID crisis, you all know that most departments only were half-staffed throughout that time period. And during that time period, I got a lot of complaints about condemned houses, grass that was 2 foot high, potholes that needed fixed, what have you. So it got to the point that I had so many that I almost composed a form email, and telling the constituents, this is not an excuse, but this is why certain things are not getting done. And you have to be patient, and I have turned it in, and on, telling the numbers that were in different departments and all the hardships that the city has been facing. And every one of the people that I reached out to and told them the truth got back to me and said, thank you for pointing that out. We understand. And I told them that I would be sure to keep their initial complaint and follow up on it when we had the manpower to take care of it. And it does work if you are honest. And I am always honest with my constituents. And I don't think this is being dishonest to go after property tax, because most people know what a bad situation we're in. It's really the worst time ever to be going for an increase in taxes. But the future of Barberton depends on it. Mr. Hay?
I'll just leave with one last thing during my research here. Out of the 28 tax districts in Summit County, we are actually the 4th lowest that goes to our actual city. That excludes schools, libraries, all that. If the 3 mills were to pass and go on top of that, we would actually still be the 8th lowest out of 28 tax districts.
Thank you. I think everybody knows that. That's the good thing about Mount Barberton and the bad thing. It's good that your taxes are low, but it's bad that the city doesn't get enough of it. Mayor Judge?
Just one more comment. Once we get the most accurate information, Mr. Flaker and I are talking all the time, keeping track of everything, working with department heads. Once we get the most accurate information, and I feel comfortable with the data, and that's the most accurate, we will generate that information out to you guys. And I've always said that. But there's so many unknowns out there. There's talk now of, with businesses in general, this is a general statement, businesses in general being the same or more efficient with employees working at home. Think of the city of Cleveland. How many people live in Cleveland versus the suburbs? So if people are now working at home, they're not paying the city of Cleveland income tax, they're paying where they are living. that could be detrimental to some cities. So, I know the state legislators looked at this in previous years separate from COVID, but this could be a real concern as we may have, again, generally speaking, a lot of vacant buildings because everyone's working from home. Now they're paying where they live because they're working there as well. I don't know how that may impact us. We have a lot of manufacturing where you can't do that type of work at home. But it's just something to throw out there. That law hasn't changed. But, that's something that's being discussed. So that's something else that is an unknown that is not in our control that we have to consider. And with the accuracy of a list of what may be cut, we've got mandates. We've got things that we have to do, or we're penalized. So we have to take that into account as well. So there's so many restrictions that a local municipality is kind of held to by the county, the state, the feds, or other agencies. So I just want everyone to be aware of that. We have to work within the confines of all these other agencies whenever we do anything. There's so much, it's kind of labor intensive with the reporting and the tracking and everything like that. So just wanted to put that information out there.
Okay,
Mr.
Dry, you were talking about services and a reduced workforce. I don't know about the other wards, but I know Mr. Tracy and the building department, the third ward, they have been doing a phenomenal job for me with the reduced workforce. They come out.
They do. I don't even know how they get it done.
I don't know how they come out. They cut the grass, they inspect the house, they talk to the neighbors. Even I myself have talked to people left my card and they go back and talk to them again. And we're getting improvements where before we weren't, just by communicating with them and they're going out. So I think they're really doing a fantastic job with the reduced force. And if you reduce it some more, I don't know. I don't like property taxes myself.
Well, I don't even know how they're getting done with it.
I don't even know how.
I really don't. But
And for myself, on a personal level, this 3 meals to me would be a lot for me because I just who I am and who I have. But, and I don't want it, but we need it. We have to have something, and that's not enough. And I get feedback from my constituents all the time. Sure, it's taxing. You don't want this, even the working outside of Barberton and things. They don't want to do that, but they will if it's a necessity. They want the city to go ahead. And even I've had complaints of lady paying, she wants to pay her driver's tax, for the license tax for Barberton. But she lives in Barberton, but it goes to Coventry because of the map they got drawn. The school district, from Robinson Algernon. She said, I want to give it to Barberton. But she can't. Like I said, I think we're doing good with what we have. And the 3 mil, sure is going to be a hard sale.
I still have the figures for like 3.9 mils, and on a $100,000 house, it would be $136.50 a year, which comes out to $11.38. And that's more mils. That's 3.9 mils. It's not 3 mils. But at any rate, are there any more comments?
Mrs. Pratt?
Yes.
We're trying to do an increase in real estate taxes. Would you think we would want to sell the vacant properties that the city owns, the vacant lands? That way we increase more revenue from the city from the vacant properties that we do that.
Well, I think that they've been thinking about that. In fact, Akron has they have something that they do in Akron, and I wouldn't mind doing it here. They will give you the lots if you mow them for a year.
Mr. Hunt, since you're paying,
And it would be, you would be killing 2 birds with 1 stone because you'd be getting rid of the mowing that you had to do, and you would also be making some property tax money. You wanted to talk?
Yeah, Mr. Hunt, what do you think about that?
I'm not going to give you my opinion. This needs to be studied further, and I'm just coming into the position, so it's something worth undertaking, and I'll look into this.
Mayor?
Yeah, we do have a side lot program. We've had it for many years. So we are actively selling lots. They have to meet qualifications. So why give or sell someone a lot if they're behind on their property taxes or they don't maintain their current property? chances are they're not gonna pay the taxes on the new property or maintain it. So those are some of the criteria. You have to be paid up on the utility and tax bill, you have to maintain your property. But we do have an active, side lot program, and we've been doing that.
Have you sold any properties in the last year to?
Yeah, of course.
Can you email me a list, please, if you don't mind?
Sure, of course.
Appreciate it, thank you. And also, in the beginning of the finance, discussion committee, you brought up Mr. Greer that he shouldn't put that public.
I did not say that he should not, I said that there have been Facebook posts. I did not call anyone out.
You said this should have been made public, like the poll.
Right,
Was there
that's
any
what
other,
I
was there,
said.
was there any other poll besides Mr. Greer's poll out there?
I beg your pardon?
Was there any other polls besides Mr. Greer's poll?
I don't believe, I didn't even see Mr. Greer's poll. That
That's
is
fine.
just, that
I
just
think it
came
should
to
be-
me from
I
constituents.
think it should be made public, especially after emails, because that way the citizens know what's going on in the city.
The thing is, Mr. Jaber,
Yes,
it's fine to make things public
right.
when they are ready to be made public. Why would you put something out when you don't even know the parameters?
I can answer that, I did a poll, Mr. Greer is going to put the poll up, I'm just saying, residents, constituents, and other business owners should know what's going on in council. I'm not trying to hide anything, obviously.
Well, I'm not trying to hide anything either, but on the same token, you don't put things out that haven't even been discussed, that aren't even on the table.
Public
Do you think
emails.
that that's a good idea?
I think so, yes, just so we can get.
You
step
think it's a
forward.
good idea to put things out there that haven't even been discussed?
Yes. But I didn't put that up there. The poll was Mr. Greer, and I think we gotta get some good feedback from that poll. Do you agree, Mr. Greer?
Can I see it?
Yes, speak.
I do think we got feedback from it. The poll didn't insinuate what we were going to do. It was just to get feedback in general for a 3 mil, 3-year levy. We did talk about it in a public email. And was the consensus, I think, between 3 council people in that email. So that's all that was. It didn't insinuate that's what we were doing. Actually, when I seen this, I did have a concern because I think in the email thread on the attachments, it said that it was a 4-year rather than a 3-year. And then I instantly was like, oh my gosh, now there's 2 pieces of information out there that are different. So I did take that into consideration, and I understand your point.
Yeah, I'm just.
But we were at a point where we could get a fill. How would I not be able, we need to be able to come to this when we're gonna be voting on the first step of it with feedback. And we knew at the time was exactly what it was. So
However, as Mr. Quay has explained, this means nothing. This is a resolution of necessity. This is going to the financial officer. So we don't even have the piece of legislation in front of us.
Let
that
me
would
ask
go
this question.
to the Board of Elections.
if we presented this to the county for a 3 million, three-year levy, and we come back and we find it's not enough and we need to change it, do we need to do an additional assessment?
No.
Say we needed to go 4 mil, 3.9 for 4 years.
Additional assessment? You
With
mean
the county.
like additional certification?
Well, we have to do an additional resolution to,
We're going to have to do an additional
Well,
one.
he needs resolution.
no,
not
resolution
necessity.
for necessity, because we would have to go back to them and ask.
Yeah, I think I understand your question.
So that's what I'm saying. We knew what we're getting into. I'm not blind to the fact. It's what it came out, that's what the information was. I made an informed decision and
I think if you intended to increase that figure to be put on the ballot, I would recommend recertifying with additional, because basically in the resolution of necessity, you're saying it's necessary that for us to operate or to assist with our operating budget to have this amount of money. And because that's a resolution that was held in an open meeting, I think it would make sense if you were going to increase that figure. Say you said you want 3, then come back and say, no, we think it's smarter to do 4. If you increased it, I would recommend a new resolution. If you're decreasing that figure, I don't necessarily think it's required under the law to have that new second resolution put on the ballot, require another prior lower figure for certification.
I just want to add that the poll didn't say council's voting on this. So about it simply asked during the hardships, I can pull it up, that the city of Barberton is experiencing, would you support a tax levy of 3 mil? But I get it. I see your point. But that's it.
Okay, and, you know, it's just, I'm making an observation, and I'm trying to make it easier on us, and I'm trying to make us work as a team, and to talk to one another, rather than going out and doing things without consulting anyone else on council.
I was gathering feedback. That's why I was elected. Very open.
May I say something, Mrs. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Greer, back in December, before you were sworn in, we were talking about, I believe it was a 4.9 mil for 4 years. Did you at that time do a survey too?
Correct.
Asking the people, you did a survey back in December too?
I believe so, yes.
That's all.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
One more thing, Ms. Wright.
Okay, yes.
If we're getting support from constituents and residents, we have to show them something. You gotta show them some vacant lands. You just gotta open up to you guys. I mean, we won't get no support from any residents for anything that goes on the ballot without us doing something for them.
I don't understand what you're saying.
We're not gonna get no support from any residents, constituents, anything, unless we start showing them that we're doing something for them. And right now, we won't get this won't pass, we won't get no support from the constituents at all. So we gotta start showing them something.
Perhaps I can expand on that. I think what Councilman Jay means is, without saying the word list, I think it's important that we show in plain English, you know, just as I've shown numbers and whatnot, in plain English, the steps we've taken. We can all sit here and tell each other what we did and actually, but I think that, look, Councilman Jay, if I'm wrong, please correct me, that aside from something that we can show residents and say, look, we had to do this, we did this, we did this. You know, we can sit here and tell them, but they need to be able to uphold it. You know, it's one of those goofy things I've learned in the restaurant business. I can tell you how much that bottle of wine is all the time, but unless you're holding that thing in front of you, that little table tent, you're not gonna get it.
Well,
And
we
I
have
think
time to do
that it's a bad thing to show it, but it's a good thing because we have to show that, yes, where the chips were down, we had to do this. It killed us to do that.
Excuse me, but I'm not saying not to inform them. I'm saying wait until you know what.
But what I'm saying is, I think what Councilman Jaber is alluding to is, we need to, like I said, I hate to use the word list, but somehow show what we've already been doing, line by line, because people, you can tell one person one thing, and you know the game of telephone. It's gonna, if we have something hard copy, I know that's a lot to ask, and sometimes it's not the easiest thing to compile. But it's worth the thought that we be able to put on paper the steps that we have taken, that we can show to people and say, look, this happened, we did this, we did this, we did this.
Well, I think
And
that.
am I following?
No, you're doing excellent, that's all I'm saying. Thank you.
I think that we should have, meetings with the public, and then you'll see, even though they complain, you will see how many people show up. I'm not saying not to do the research, not to do the information, but I am saying people would rather complain than actually even know why you're doing whatever you're doing.
But as long as we have that, no one can say that we did. And that's,
Right.
I know that sounds stupid to say, but.
But
that's
we
one of
would,
the-
we
that's
would
one
go
of
out and have public meetings, because this does have to be sold, and it does have to be explained
the- that's where
as to
having
what the
something in
situation
hand-
is.
Having something in hand would be the most beneficial. Like I said, I know that's not an easy thing to compile with the steps that we've taken day by day, week by week, but I do think that does hold legs, that we need to have something that if we are able to have public meetings whenever the governor allows us to again, that we should be able to have something in our hands. And if 2 people show up and we handed it to 2 people, no one can ever say we didn't do it. And no one
What
can
if
say
we
didn't.
don't do that, then we should include it in the water bill or something,
I
if we
would-
can't have public meetings.
I would fully support that. Oh, that
But
would
it's
be.
not that I'm trying to hide anything,
No,
I'm
I
just
understand,
saying
but
that.
that is a great idea if we could have something to put in the water. I didn't think of that, and I love that idea. But.
Okay, any other comments, because this is gonna go till 10, if we don't get moving. No more comments. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Carlin Bevick made a motion to adjourn and it was seconded.
I'll second.
Everybody's gonna second it. Craig Venters, and we are adjourned at 8:29 PM.
Okay, take 5.
We'll have it.
No, because I gave
That's the one.
Well, worse than that, I can't, that was a long meeting. I know, but I wasn't. No, but I was not saying.
We'll catch up in the morning. Good luck.
Is that running in our booth or being heard?
Renee,
You'll walk out. See you later. I'm sorry, you'll walk out if I.
No. Yeah. No, I'm sleeping here.
You know, Lisa, we've got
Yeah,
couches.
I let go.
You can just spend the night here. You like it? I do. It's so much easier.
Yeah, we're back to our.
Unfortunately, you're not. I'm glad you got a key now.
I don't like you guys.
We love you.
None of you guys.
But no, anytime you need a key, just get a hard key. Really?
I'm not gonna say.
It must be a bad year because they're not. Well, if it continues, they should find out. Well, I'm telling you can curl up on the couch, but this building is noisy at night. It's now very strange. There's a lot of strange noises that come out.
Exactly, that is my point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point.
Well, and that's the problem.
Don't say that. You can't say that. You can't say I have a call for it.
In all fairness, I usually have. And then, I just. Well, there's couches. If you guys are here till midnight. Yeah. I mean, I get in contact with them. Well, I heard that, the doctors were getting out of this weekend. Fireworks. Like 2 days before, they had, because of the, I didn't.
And they said, they said, we were sure that we had done it, but I didn't, look, we're not a 2 hour meeting, I can't bring that back. Oh my God, that's my house.
It's turned on. Yeah, it's going right now. Yeah, it's going.
I would think,
Yeah, it's on.
I would think driving on.
Was I just totally on?
This is what they want people to do safely. I don't know how to answer. It's right. Shorter to get your cuttings planted? Right. I mean, you're doing it every day. I'll tell you, when they're that tiny, and it is that hot and dry. Oh, exactly. Well, I get those. I'm gonna do my best for you. I'm glad to see that. I didn't go into that because it's not a big one. In the kitchen, she says.
Yeah, I didn't open this yet, so.
Thank you.
Right.
Oh, I know.
All I can find is this kind of
Let me see if I can find it.
I know, I looked in every cupboard, Carol.
I'm gonna look because I'm not gonna, I won't even drink it, Carla. I won't even drink it.
I got no house back. That's really.
And I'm not joking.
Well, let's get this thing going.
May I ask a real quick question? When we, I thought
Look,
we
Carla.
mentioned when we.
Let's get
Carla?
this
Oh,
moving.
good.
Huh?
I think you mentioned that we put everyone that was displaced back in their regular. We did. Am I lazy?
Guys ready?
So,
So there's gonna be savings.
Yeah.
It's gonna be very interesting.
I'll be honest with you,
No candy.
No, I'm trying to.
It was too hot out, my stuff.
My neighbor, You should have.
Are you ready?
Yeah, he did, thank you.
Don't forget to dance.
Either way, somebody's gonna see it.
Oh, I didn't know.
What's that?
Pretty good.
Okey dokey, so let's do it.
Good. You can take over.
Oh, dude.
Okay, this is the beginning of the whole meeting of the Barberton City Council. Today is Monday, July 6th, 2020. It is now 8:40, and please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up, citizens addressing council. Do we have anybody?
Yes, I have two.
Okay, up.
The first one's from John Franks, 947 Mansion Circle. No to the tax. The city should be run like a business. When a business is mismanaged, it can't go to its customers and ask them to get more money. Downsize, lay off, cut pay. Do what a successful company would do, get more business. As always, our city workers think the citizens should work for the city workers. It should be the other way around. The city workers work for the citizens and should average a lower pay than the city population. Since when should the workers get paid more than their employers? Outsource maintenance, etc. Cut costs, stop the tax and spend intellect. The second one is from Robert Augustinovich, 405 Grandview Avenue. This city of Barberton administration considering pursuing a 3-year property tax to ensure sufficient funds for current operating expenses of the city is the wrong thing to do. There is no mystery why Barberton City Council is confronting a fiscal shortage because the Barberton administration was reluctant to discuss real changes that needed to be made to the fire department contract and others during negotiations. With the passage of the fire department's new contract by the Barberton City Council, now with a 2% pay rise and an added holiday, what is the current overtime and sick time off for the fire department now under the new contract, January 1, 2020 through December 31st, 2020? I do not support any tax increase for the city of Barberton at this time. That's it.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go to our committee reports. First off is planning, annexation, and codes, Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning and annexation for codes met this evening, at 6:10. All committee people were, there. I was there on phone along with other council members. We had a draft ordinance titled Formation of a Community Improvement Corporation, an ordinance authorizing the formation of a Community Improvement Corporation for the city of Barberton and approving its article of incorporation. There was remarks that were made from Mr. Greer to the mayor that I did not know, therefore I did not have any, I didn't discuss it with the mayor. Mrs. DeBevick was asking about the application process, particularly for the council member, and she feels that the chair of finance should be on that committee. We did nothing with this at this point because I need to get Mr. Greer's emails so he can take that and go further with it. Mayor wasn't available at this meeting, nor was Attorney Sherman. So we then adjourned at 6:30. That's all.
Are you finished?
And with that, I pass. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up is Street sidewalks and lighting, Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street sidewalk and lighting met today, July 6, 2020 at 6 p.m. here in the Active Adult Center. All members were present. Mrs. Angeloff was present but on the phone. All other council members were present and guests noted on my sheet. We had one late request for legislation and we had to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. This was a draft ordinance, preliminary participatory legislation for Worcester Road North and Norton Avenue, giving consent to the Director of Ohio Department of Transportation for the improvement of Worcester Road North and Norton Avenue. This is we received a grant from this already, and this is the next step in this project for Worcester Road North. The project will go from Burt Street to roughly the Indian, where the Indian's at the intersection where Norton Avenue is at. And Norton Avenue will go from 4th Street to the same area roughly where the Indian's at. No funding for this project is due until 2021 and next summer. The estimate for this project is $950,000 for the entire project. That includes both streets, and the city will pay approximately $190 to have this done. And there is no timeline for this project yet. There was no miscellaneous discussion, and with that, we adjourned. I don't have a time, but I think it was 6:09 p.m. And with that, I pass.
Okay, thank you. Next up, City Utilities and Mrs. Colbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met this evening in the Active Adult Center. All members were present. We had a late request for legislation in which we had to invoke Rule 702 to suspend Rule 302. This was a draft ordinance appropriation stormwater in which we appropriated $594,571.25 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the stormwater capital budget of the FEMA fund. And this was referred to finance. This is for the 14th Street buyout. Our second ordinance this evening was another one that we had to invoke Rule 702 to suspend Rule 302. That was a draft ordinance titled Utility Assessment Delinquent Water. This was an ordinance authorizing and directing the city of Barberton to certify to the Summit County Auditor's special assessment against certain properties for unpaid utility services, which will include accounts more than 60 days past due and will include charges through April 21st, 2020. We had discussion on this that included the leniency that will be shown to those that were out of work and will help them to get back on their feet before any assessments will be charged. This was mostly going to be for landlords that have been past due bills that they haven't taken care of. We had no miscellaneous discussion, and with that, I pass.
Thank you. Next up is Mrs. DeBevick with Public Welfare and Safety.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met on June 22nd, 2020, here in the Active Adult Center with all members of the committee present and all others mentioned. We had one request, well, two requests for legislation, but yeah, we had two requests for legislation. The first one is a draft ordinance which was referred to finance, appropriating $8,750 from the unappropriated item of the fire capital levy to the fire department capital budget. And this was due to a reimbursement from a grant for the disinfecting system that they received for COVID. And the next piece of legislation, which I believe we voted on, it was the scrapping of vehicles. This wasn't vehicles. So we voted on that piece of legislation already. So we are finished with that. And with that, public welfare and safety will pass.
Thank you. Next up, Rules Marketing and Development, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met tonight in the Active Adult Center. All members of council present and others as noted. We have 5 pieces of legislation tonight. Draft ordinance titled Proposed Charter Amendment, Department of Public Service to elimination of the Division of Engineering. We made a motion to call for this piece of legislation, and we're gonna go 3 readings on it. Our second draft ordinance titled Proposed Charter Amendment Planning Commission Planning Director. We call for that piece of legislation, and that's gonna be 3 readings also. Our third piece, draft ordinance Proposed Charter Amendment Parks and Recreation Commission Director. The Director of Parks and Recreation shall serve at the pleasure of the mayor. A motion was made to call for this, and this is also going to be 3 readings on this. Our fourth piece, a proposed charter amendment, other commissions or boards. The elimination of several boards that are no longer relevant to the current operation of the city. A motion was made to call for this and voted on, and we're gonna go 3 readings on this particular item. Our fifth draft ordinance titled Proposed Charter Amendment Review Commission. The mayor shall appoint the Charter Review Commission no later than that last day of February. We called for this piece of legislation and voted for it, and it's going to go 3 readings. And we also had miscellaneous discussion about the charter review. A motion was made and second, and we adjourned at 6:55, and with that, I pass.
Thank you. Next up, Environmental Health and Social Services, Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met July 6th at the Adult Center at 6:10. All members present, other council members noted. No new request for legislation, and we had no discussion. And with that, adjourned at 6:11, sir. And that pass.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is City Properties, Parks and Recreation, Mr. Hyden.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks and Recreation met a couple of weeks ago on Monday, June 22nd at 6 p.m. in the Active Adult Center. All members were present. All council members were present, plus guests noted. We had no new requests for legislation. We voted on a memorandum of understanding with Norton about the cemetery that sits on the Portage property that is now going to be going to Christian Healthcare Ministries. We had to amend to add emergency wording because they wanted to get started right away, made a compelling argument to do so. Our miscellaneous discussion involved all the activity boxes, lunches, all passed out on various Mondays at the parks. Our playgrounds are now open, the rims are up, and I'm not sure about McCafferty yet. I've not driven by there to see. They were resurfacing that one, so at the time they were not. With that, we adjourned at 6:04, and I pass.
Thank you. Okay, Finance Personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Personnel Committee met tonight, July 6, 2020. The meeting began at 7:18 and lasted until 8:30. All members of the committee were present. However, Mrs. Angeloff was present on the phone, and others as noted on my sheet. We had quite a few requests for legislation tonight. The first was a draft ordinance titled COVID-19 Local Government Payroll Support Grant Program, requesting the city of Barberton to receive its share of funds from the county COVID-19 Local Government Payroll Support Grant Program funds. This money would come directly from the county. Certain counties within the state that had a larger population were able to get CARES money based on that population. Therefore, they're going to distribute it to the cities and townships within Summit County. It has been noted that, well, originally Summit County had thought that police and fire salaries could be paid through this, with this money. However, we're still waiting for the ins and outs of that. We will receive roughly $700,000 from the county, and we have received $900,000 from the state. So altogether, we will have $1.7 million between the county and the state. And Mrs. Bevick brought up a question regarding the health department, because we have to pay Summit County for our portion of use of the health department, and she was wondering whether or not that could be covered with that. Mr. Flaker will get all the information together and will update us on that as information is received. The second draft ordinance was titled Create New Fund, Summit County COVID-19 PSGP Fund. This is authorizing the Director of Finance to create a new fund, the Summit County COVID-19 PSGP Fund. This fund has been created to receive the monies that we will get from Summit County. Then we had a couple of late requests, and the first one was a draft ordinance titled Additional Tax Levy, Resolution of Necessity, a resolution of necessity to levy an additional 3 mills of tax to ensure sufficient funds for current operating expenses of the city, and requesting that the county auditor certify the total current tax valuation of the city and amount of annual revenue that would be generated by the proposed 3 mill increase. We had to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302 to bring this out of committee, and it did pass, and we will be voting on that in a special legislative session this evening. The second piece of legislation that we had to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302 was a draft ordinance titled Authorized Payment to Kenmore Construction Company, authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Kenmore Construction Company in the amount of $40,693.54 for the emergency repairs to a collapsed 8-inch sanitary sewer on Miami Avenue. This work was done in February of 2019. We did not receive the purchase order until June of 2019. However, somehow the purchase order got closed out, it never got paid, and therefore we are just now getting the invoice again to be paid. And Mr. Weaver applied for an emergency grant for this particular project, and we will receive $37,000 in grant money for this $40,000 bill. We had yet another draft ordinance where we had to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. This was an appropriation stormwater appropriating $594,571.25 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the stormwater capital budget of the FEMA fund. This was referred to us from utilities, and this particular amount of money is for the 14th Street buyout for the homes that FEMA will be buying. Current legislation was ordinance number 71-2020. However, I think, did you say we already voted on that? Okay, it was called for at the 6/22/2020 meeting, and it is appropriation for the fire department. It is an appropriation in the amount of $8,750 from the capital levy, and it was transferred to the capital budget for a disinfecting system, for the purchase of a disinfecting system, and this was referred to finance from safety. During miscellaneous discussion, we had a very long discussion regarding the legislation for a property tax, which we will be voting on the first phase of that this evening. Let me see. We will be voting for on a resolution of necessity, and it will be sent to the fiscal officer of Summit County for certification. If it is passed tonight, we will be preparing an ordinance after we receive the certification back from the Summit County Fiscal Office. That is all. There was a lot of discussion, however, I just kind of summarized it. And we adjourned at 8:29 PM, and with that, finance will pass.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that's the end of our committee of the whole meeting. We will have a legislative meeting in 1 minute. This meeting is over at 9 o'clock. Wait,
I'm sorry, does the mayor have any comments, because we can't do it on legislative?
okay.
Can't do it on legislative?
I didn't have it on the agenda,
Oh, okay.
and so you can't do anything that's not on the agenda.
Okay. I'll try to be quick. Yes, I have a few comments.
Sorry.
No problem. Just a few updates. You may be aware of some of this. On the infrastructure side, projects are moving forward. Some were delayed because of COVID and for other reasons. Stormwater, for instance, Foundation Fields retention pond expansion is moving forward, going very nicely. Inlets on Fifth and Lincoln, proceeding forward, but that's going to take some time here. Webb Park, we've done as best as we can to drain it and dry it out. Luckily, the last few weeks have been pretty hot and humid, which has helped us in that effort. So we're going to continue with reclaiming that ditch there. And then obviously with some of the legislation that was discussed today, 14th Street with FEMA, that's moving forward. And that's been 2 years in the making, 4 years in the making? 3 years. My eyesight's going bad, sorry. 3 years in the making. These are slow programs. We did apply last year for 15th Street, and we're waiting to hear back. So those are all good programs. On the road side, this year we're receiving AMATS funding for 2 roads, Waterloo Road and South Van Buren. This is we've got a lot of money coming in through AMATS that we applied for years ago. It's been awarded, just not released. Some stats for you. Since AMATS started, the city's been awarded double what we received in the first 32 years. So first 32 years was roughly $7.5 million in 32 years. In the last 8 years, we've doubled that, what we've been, if not more. I don't have the exact breakdown. We've leveraged your income taxes with that special fund for 10 times the number. So the money that was being awarded to other communities is now coming to Barberton. So we're starting to get our fair share. We're still lagging behind other communities, but it's staggering to see what we've made up in 8 years, double what the city received in 32 years. And there's a lot of variables associated with that. So talking about the charter amendment and some of the things, the discussions tonight, I want to bring up the charter amendment, the Division of Engineering. I was asked over the weekend, if that passes the voters, will we still have the job description? Yes. So some history on the Division of Engineering. We've gone out, since I've been mayor, the last 8 years, we've gone out several times to try to fill the position. I know this comes up whenever there's an election. We're not abiding by the charter. We've gone out several times to fill that position, and everyone we interviewed made double what we pay. So when we start saying, well, this is what we can offer you, no one will take the job because they're all making $120,000 or more. So to fill that position, we've gone through the steps, we've tried, and we can't get anyone to take the job. So it just makes sense that it comes out of the charter as a requirement, yet we keep it in the pay scale, pay wage, and also in the job description. So if we do fill a position, we still have those two that the person would have to abide by, okay? The other thing is the income, or the property tax, excuse me. We talked a lot about that today. This is the first step moving forward. And then later this month, early August, would be, if passed by council, the second piece. I think some of the discussion today was that maybe the survey maybe was jumping the gun a little bit. I think that we're all on the same page that we don't want to raise taxes, but it's a necessity at this point. I think that absolutely we will get something out to council and the voters of what we've done, what we've cut, and the revenue we've generated. BWXT, ARDL, Peaceful Fruit, some of these other businesses and expansions that will continue will inform you about. And what we've cut on the expense side. There was another post by Mr. Jaber talking about he was shocked that this came out. Well, there's been emails being flying around about this, a lot of communication, a lot of ideas. This is something that actually goes back a year and a half, 2 years. So if anyone's shocked, you need to read your emails, you need to communicate with us, got the information, waiting on the accurate numbers, but we can't just ignore this issue. We can't kick this can down the road anymore. We're living in reality. This is a necessity. We have to work together as a team. No one's in favor of taxes, but I think that this is a good start. We've defined the year. It's going to start, it's going to stop, and I think that's everyone's intention. One person called me who's in favor of this and said, hey, after 3 years, can council vote to keep it going? I said, of course they can. It'd have to go back to the voters because it's period certain. They want it to go on for longer. But I think that we've got, our message is we've got need, and we'll fill in the gaps of what we've done, but it's time certain. So I think that's an important aspect as well. So we're going to wait for those accurate numbers. Mr. Flaker is working with the county and the auditor's office, so several different fronts there. And as we get into break time in August, our jobs continue as we're trying to collect data and work with CCA and get all that information. So if you have questions, please contact us, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to mention, I mentioned this kind of randomly. The next week is going to be pretty hot. And I live next to an elderly woman that I periodically check on. So I just want to remind everybody that it's going to be very hot, and check on your neighbors. And yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, this meeting is over at 9:05. 1 minute and we'll start the next one.
Oh, okay.
No, because I use your measurement. I don't, bring me a pair, yes. It'll only take me 15 minutes once I have the measurement. I looked for it, and I don't, I was supposed to.
No problem.
Thank you. Because they are beautiful. I had somebody say, whose skin is that?
Did you tell them to really ask?
Well, they don't know you.
In this way.
It's green. It's blue.
Shiny? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Shark skin, huh?
Well, not quite.
Close.
It's baby blue.
Oh, boy.
No, it's not baby blue. It's bright blue.
Okay,
So we're looking. Of course, it'd be good.
this is a special legislative meeting of the Barberton City Council. Today is Monday, July 6, 2020. It is 9:09. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. Angela,
Here, my phone.
Mrs. Coburn,
Here.
Mrs. Devitt,
Here.
Mrs. Fry,
Here.
Mr. Greer,
Here.
Mr. Griffin,
Here.
Mr. Redding,
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
First reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Resolution number 82, 2020, presented by Mrs. Fry, titled Additional Tax Levy Resolution of Necessity. A resolution of necessity to levy an additional 3 mills of tax to ensure sufficient funds for current operating expenses of the city, and requesting that the county auditor certify the total current tax valuation of the city and amount of annual revenue that would be generated by the proposed 3 mill increase and declare an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rules required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Okay, you don't have to stand up. Your mic works better.
Okay.
sitting down.
Okay,
Okay, and Mrs.
Thank you.
DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Fry and second by Mrs. DeBevick to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
No.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mrs. Devitt,
No.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mr. Heide,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry.
yes.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of resolution number 82-2020.
And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on adoption of resolution number 82, 2020.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry and second by Mrs. DeBevick to adopt resolution number 82, 2020. Are there any remarks? Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say that I personally am not yet sold on any tax levy. And I want to point out that this is not the initiative to go to the ballot. This is simply learning more about what this proposal will bring in. It doesn't mean that we're raising taxes. This is, as mentioned earlier, that this is, we could say no after this.
Yeah, it's just the first step.
With that said, I'm going to vote for this and I will not stand in the way of something going to the voters. Like I said, we are not rulers, we are representatives, and any time that a voter can choose and is something that I will cherish and send to them. So.
Anyone else? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
We did do that, right? Got me questioning.
No, we did.
No, we didn't do the adoption.
We
Yeah,
did
we
adoption.
did.
Okay.
I thought we did.
We
We
did.
did,
I
we
just,
did.
We did.
You asked,
I
you
spoke
haven't taken
for
the
a
vote.
minute.
Can't take the vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were right.
Okay.
You got me going. I know. Okay, Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Heide,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
yes.
Mrs. Devitt,
No.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
No.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we're done here. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay, and Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adjourn.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Hyde that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 9:13.
I think as of what, pretty good. Working on.
I have no idea.
I was.
Right here.
I don't know if you got sick and.
I looked for that.